Did you go into the right link, Joe?
Yeah, I have, Todd, but I don't know what and why. I'm going to try it again.
All right. I go into the wrong one every week, and then I curse myself.
Can everyone hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, ready to go?
Okay.
You good, Dan? All right, we're going to call this meeting of Orangeville Town Council to order. We're going to start with the singing of our national anthem. Mr. Donato.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so next item of business is our land acknowledgement. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and the Odawa of the Three Fires Confederacy. This meeting is being aired on public television and or streamed live and may be taped for later public broadcast or webcast. Your name is part of the public record and will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Item 9, Horizon Report. We have a report from our General Manager of Corporate Services, Andrew McKinney, and our IT Director, Jason Hall. And we also had some diversity training in our closed session tonight. And we also received closed minute meetings of previous closed sessions that happened in 2020. We have a motion to receive the Horizon Report, please. The report. Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Sherwood, all in favor?
Yes.
Item number 10 is the adoption of minutes from the previous council meeting. This is council meeting 2020, December 14th. Any errors or omissions there, councillors? We have a motion to adopt those minutes, please.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, as amended, because I think you wanted to note some change with respect to the donation.
Right, yeah, that's right. So in those minutes, I had mentioned last meeting that Tire Discounter had donated $3,000 in food. In actual fact, it was $47,000, but it was to food banks in Southern Ontario who Tire Discounter operated in the cities that they operate in, so Ottawa, London, Toronto, etc. So the total was $47,000. The amount that came to the Orangeville Food Bank was in the order of $13,000, and I shared that with the Clerk's Department to make that change in the official minutes. So other than that change, any other errors or omissions, councillors? No. Okay. So we had Councillor Andrews and Councillor Sherwood approving that. All in favor? So good. Okay, moving on to our presentations. Tonight we have Jesse Burns from Optimist going to give us an overview on the government service delivery review. Jesse, are you with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Very good.
Great. I also have my two of my colleagues, David Lynch and Mariam Ali, here as well. I hope they've both been able to join. David and Mariam, are you here?
Yep, right here.
Very good.
Okay.
Welcome.
So then we can get started. Miriam, did you want to present the deck? If you're able to, or
I'm just pulling it up now. I should be loading.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, great. So thank you everyone for the time this evening. I'm actually going to hand over to my colleague David Lynch to get us started.
Great. Thank you, Jesse, and thank you for having us tonight. As Jesse said, there's the three of us, Jesse, Miriam, and myself here tonight. I'll just make a few introductory remarks. One is, this is, as it says, their recommendations report. This is for you, the council, and your colleagues in the other member municipalities to consider and to decide whether to accept, and if so, how to proceed amongst yourselves. So I look forward to, I guess, having you consider this. And as you'll see, as we go through some of these recommendations from the service delivery review, some will have greater relevance for Orangeville, and some will have less relevance, given that some of them deal more with the other member municipalities. So with that, I'll go forward to the next slide. And we'll just do a very quick project recap. As all of our projects at Optimus SBR, we talk about project mission and success, where mission is the nuts and bolts of what you've asked us to do, and success is more intangible things that our clients typically want to get out of engagement. So obviously in this case, we did a service delivery review for shared and or potentially shared municipal services amongst the member municipalities. And working with yourselves, we had to get an appreciation of actionable recommendations, alignment on the engagement and outcomes, and buy-in amongst county stakeholders that these are aligned with what people need. Go to the next slide. And as it says there, today's focus is on Part A. There was a Part B, which was done for the County of Dufferin proper, and that's a separate report. Today's focus is on Part A, which is managed by the working group comprised of the CAOs of the member municipalities in the county, as well as a steering committee, which included elected representatives from each of the local councils. Go to the next slide. Perfect. And we're really at the end of the process here tonight. This was quite an extensive engagement. It was interrupted by COVID back in March, as much else was, but we start off with phase one, project initiation and project management. And you may remember the joint council meeting held back in about around close to this time last year. Then went through and did a Deborah's inventory and looked at or how the services in our scope were conducted across the different member municipalities. And then we went and developed opportunities and recommendations in a collaborative manner with yourselves and your colleagues. And tonight we're really at the on taking 3 and look forward to proceeding. I'll hand it over to Jesse at this point.
Great. Thanks, David. So Miriam, if you want to continue on to slide 6, I'll just quickly introduce the future state report that David alluded to and walk you through how we developed that. And then I'll hand over to Miriam to go through some of the specific recommendations. But on slide 6, really want to emphasize that the focus of the report is on recommendations. Our approach focused on addressing the issues that were identified in our current state report. And that included developing recommendations to address specific gaps, whether those are raised by stakeholders or whether there are gaps in terms of looking for good practices that we can apply to the member municipalities related to each of the services that were in scope for this review. And I'll highlight those services in a moment. Some of the recommendations, as David already alluded to, are applicable to all of the member municipalities in the county. Some are applicable to only a subset of those. And again, that's based on the current state findings and reflect the reality that some organizations are further along a sort of path of development than others with respect to the delivery of the various services. Generally, the recommendations do focus on a shared service perspective and address the focus areas that were identified at the beginning of the project, that joint council meeting that David spoke of about this time last year. We engaged the CAOs and other stakeholders where additional information was necessary, and presented updates to the working group and as we were developing these recommendations. I'll explain more about that in a minute. And then just to note that full consensus with respect to these recommendations was not a requirement to include a recommendation in a report, and we've identified some feedback that we did receive from the joint council meeting. Ultimately, as David mentioned, it's a council's decision on whether to move forward with recommendations or whether to revise if necessary. On slide 7, just to highlight again, in terms of development of the recommendations that you've seen in the report, based on good leading practices and desk research, preliminary opportunities were included in the current state report. Those were further explored through joint CAO working sessions with additional refinement and analysis conducted on the different recommendations, and those were reviewed and discussed with the steering committee as we developed those recommendations. On to the next slide. So slide 8, just as a reminder, the 11 in scope services, and these are the services that Miriam will walk through in a moment, and we'll go through the recommendations that are contained within each of those services. But before that, I'll just quickly run through the analysis that we conducted in terms of evaluating the recommendations. So, Miriam, if you go to slide 10, what we've done is we've assessed the impact based on our shared services objectives. And that's where we looked at business enablement, resource stewardship, and impact. So around business enablement, you'll see an assessment in terms of the impact of the recommendation on things like staff expertise and training, processes, tools, technology to actually deliver these services. We've also considered resource stewardship, so the impact on costs, so the ability to reduce costs or better control the rate of increase while maintaining services, and then impact, so looking at the ability to improve the quality of service and services that are ultimately delivered. The other evaluation that we did is on slide 11, which is looking at the difficulty and cost. So that's recognizing that implementing these recommendations takes effort, and we know that there's finite resources across the county. So an estimate of considerations related to things like external support and staff time to implement some of the recommendations, procurement costs associated with potential recommendations, as well as timelines and change management activities, recognizing that some of these are big recommendations that will need to have a change management considerations moving forward. So that's very quickly. We just wanted to highlight a little bit of the process that went into developing the recommendations. I've gone through that quickly because we want to get to the recommendations themselves, but I'll hand over here to Miriam to walk through the recommendations that are in each of those services.
Perfect. Thank you, Jesse. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into these and start off with the accounting. But before I begin, I just wanted to orient you to how we've laid out the overview for each of the profiles. We have on each slide the recommendations along with an assessment of the impact on shared services that Jesse just spoke to you about, along those 3 different dimensions, as well as the implementation cost and effort. And then lastly, you will see the section on the right where we've looked at which municipalities would be impacted by the recommendation as well. Okay, and so with the accounting services, the goal of the review was to really identify potential areas of duplication and to determine where formal or informal agreements for technology sharing may exist. To that effect, our first recommendation was to develop a budget framework for the rural member municipalities that would be able to tie their budget to key strategic priorities. As we've noted, this is not relevant to Orangeville, given that there's quite a a lot of good work going on in this area, and you've already been priority setting and having your budgets developed to address those different priority areas as well. The second piece here was more of a long-term consideration, was to explore a shared budgeting and accounting software. That's and this is linked to the recommendations in Part B, which Dave mentioned earlier, which is focused on the county's internal operations. We've recommended to review this, once the county has been able to explore what their shared budgeting software may look like and see what the municipalities would find this to be beneficial. Across the board, for the most part, Excel was identified as the common tool for budgeting purposes, and so there was interest in some of the rural municipalities in particular developing more robust capabilities. And again, this may not be more relevant, as relevant for Orangeville, given the work that you're already doing in this area. So for indoor recreation, we're looking at arena services. The goal of the review was to understand gaps in the current governance structure and to recommend a governance and reporting structure that better enables municipal oversight and involvement in the recreation facilities. The first recommendation was to explore a revision to the current governance structure that's associated with the indoor recreation facilities. There was two options outlined within the report itself, really changing either the reporting structure or to dissolve the actual recreation boards of management. These don't impact Orangeville since you've already have municipal services, recreation services within your municipality currently. The second recommendation here was to develop a regional recreation facility strategy. This here, we're really talking about tying the investments that each local municipality makes in recreation and facilities, looking at, what do residents want, what kind of investments need to be made, and how it's going to be adjusted for future growth. We know that there has been work already at Orangeville in looking at recreation and master planning, and so that would serve as an input to a Dufferin-wide recreation and facilities strategy, so not to be ignored, and is certainly going to be pushing that work forward as well. We also want to make sure that the work of recreation and facilities would also be aligning with other plans such as arts, culture, and heritage for a more holistic view of recreation planning. Okay, and so for the third service profile here was around bylaw enforcement. We recognize that Orangeville, currently already has a bylaw enforcement policy. So the first one here around updating was really looking at all the bylaw enforcement policies across Dufferin and noticing that there were some that had elements that would be able to make the policy more robust. And so those elements have been suggested for update across the board. We've also looked at the development of key performance indicators across all the municipalities. These are based on good practice and provide evidence for potential future investments for service improvement. These, could be developed by each municipality alone, or it could be an exercise that's done across the member municipalities. You'll notice the second recommendation here was around hiring a shared bylaw enforcement resource. This was particular to the rural member municipalities since Orangeville already has the volume to support its own operations. So the recommendation for economic development services here, we're looking at a goal of fostering more strategic planning and alignment between the county and the member municipalities. So the recommendation was around developing a collaborative framework and action plan for the region that's going to build on the existing economic development strategies that have been developed by the county, by Orangeville, and Shelburne. These existing strategies are really going to become the starting point for a collaborative framework. And this would also allow implementation of economic development priorities across Dufferin through the development of an implementation plan for member municipalities and the county. Essentially, we want to make sure that there is coordination between the member municipalities and that they have access to resources in order to support them. Okay. For fire services, the goal of the review is really to look at the governance of fire services as it's delivered through different boards for the most part across Dufferin. And so here the first recommendation was really to look at exploring an alternative governance structure for fire departments. Of course, this doesn't pertain to Orangeville, given that you have an internal municipal fire department within your organization. The second here was to look at establishing a regional fire chiefs association. And here we know that some of the fire chiefs are meeting informally or ad hoc. And what we're suggesting here is to just build more rigor into this, establishing agendas and items for review and discussion to ensure that the different fire chiefs are able to speak on common issues across the region, such as procurement or other areas as well. And then the third was to improve reporting and performance measurement. This is really to look at improving operations through more informed decision making and increasing the transparency of fire department operations, to making sure that there was annual reporting for some of the key performance indicators and to make that available online as well. So for human resources, we were looking at a goal of making sure that all the member municipalities are compliant with current practices, and given that this is an area of regulatory change, that there is subject matter expertise available where it's required. The first recommendation really looks at the hire of the new health and safety coordinator and establishing a memorandum of understanding, but that needs to be drafted between the member municipalities. You'll know that this doesn't apply to Orangeville, as this is a position that's been in place for some time, but Orangeville has not participated in this county and shared resource. We've also recommended exploring, retaining a shared HR consulting firm to address HR needs, given that several of the rural member municipalities didn't have the volume necessarily for full-time HR resources, and so we're looking at sharing that and sourcing out to a firm that would have full service HR needs. Again, this wouldn't apply to Orangeville, as you have a dedicated HR department. And so, you already have updated policies and procedures in place. The third piece that we looked at was, again, a long-term consideration. It was recommended that the member municipalities and the county explore a shared HRIS, Human Resources Information System, to find efficiencies in HR processes and to really allow for, making employee reporting more robust. This is, considered to be a lower priority, but the county may go down this route, and because of that, there might be an opportunity to find efficiencies and perhaps prefer pricing with multiple member municipalities engaging in that, if that is meeting their requirements. Okay, and then looking at IT services really was to identify opportunities for pooling resources, looking at, for example, cybersecurity, looking at the distribution of costs and some other key areas for IT services as well. And so the first recommendation was around developing a costing model for the county IT services in order to get an input from the member municipalities in the county in order to ensure that, the county is able to achieve true cost recovery from those that are participating. So you'll note that we've marked off a few of the member municipalities as being impacted by this. Those are the member municipalities that currently receive services from the county. Those that have not been marked off are, can still participate in the costing model to find out if the, cost of internal or external contracting, versus the cost of the county would be beneficial to review. And then the second group here recommendation was to establish a regional working group. This is really to, make sure that with the increasing importance of IT services, paired with, the large breadth of IT activities that each municipality must take on, that a kind of subcommittee of the DMOA, the Dufferin Municipalities Officer Association, be established where you're able to discuss best practices around key topics. Some of the key ones that came up were around network planning, cybersecurity, website maintenance, etc. Okay. And for planning, the first recommendation is really around streamlining and making the development approval process consistent. We understand that the Planning Act specifies the timelines that municipalities are required to adhere to for development approvals. It's however, within the municipality's domain to determine the process and the tools that are in place to facilitate approvals. And so we recommend that the member municipalities streamline the process to respond to development approvals and enhance the tools that are being used to facilitate the municipal application process. This would include updating website content, ensuring that there are pre-consultation meetings being held, and then there's a variety of checklist tools that we've identified. The second recommendation here is linked to the IT services costing model, and GIS support was one of the suite of services that we believe should be incorporated into that costing model, where you're able to review across the municipalities whether internal or external costs of providing GIS support would be lesser than that being provided by the county, and if that's the case, then the member municipalities can participate with the county in a memorandum of understanding. Okay, procurement, is an area of consistent regulatory change, and the objective of the review was to ensure that there are processes in place to ensure compliance. The first recommendation is really around modernizing procurement methods, which involves updating and reviewing existing policies, looking at establishing a vendor of record, and participating in group purchasing organizations. When it comes to the policies and procedures, that's less of a concern for Orangeville. Likely, however, when it comes to group purchasing organizations or a vendor of record, that we believe would be beneficial for Orangeville as far as reducing administrative processes, but also potentially looking at cost efficiencies through group purchasing. The second element here was to establish a different procurement working group to ensure that staff are able to share in best practices, as well as discuss any significant items that are coming up for procurement that may be eligible again for group purchases and cost efficiencies. So looking at roads, the first recommendation here was to continue the development of the transportation master plan. This was already started as part of the municipal comprehensive review process, and we have provided key elements of the plan that should be considered within the recommendation. The second element here was around really enhancing resource sharing, and that could be done through the development of a Dufferin-wide public works asset management plan for equipment and vehicles, in order to look at, inventorying all the resources across Dufferin and balancing that equipment for more efficient use. And what we've heard was that sharing was informal and doesn't necessarily support future planning. So we wanted to ensure that this was something that could be formalized and used for planning purposes on a regular basis. And then lastly, looking at winter control, the objective of the review here was to find ways to integrate winter maintenance across Dufferin. One of our first recommendations was to develop a business case for establishing a second county operations center. And though this impacts the county directly, we believe that Orangeville or other neighboring municipalities may benefit from additional space at such a facility. And in that instance, there is a possibility for a cost sharing arrangement between those member municipalities. In addition, we looked at, improving services for residents. It's recommended that the existing communications protocols be enhanced, in particular as they relate to road closures, but also more broadly to ensure that there's public understanding and inform residents of operational considerations for winter maintenance services in particular. And then lastly, it's recommended that storage space be increased for the winter control equipment as well across the different municipalities. Okay. Right. And I'll just pass it off to Jesse to just wrap up on next steps here for us.
Yep. Thanks, Miriam. So really, in terms of the next steps, we've shared the final future state report with the CAOs and the member municipalities, and we're just in the process of conducting these updates to councils for the municipalities across the county, and we'll begin to conduct the sort of the formal knowledge transfer, making sure that the working group has any of the raw information or documentation that they require from us as we start to formally wrap up the project. But that's really the overview that we wanted to provide. But if there are any questions, we're happy to take those in whatever format is appropriate.
Councilor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just for my own knowledge, Your Worship, are we using, what system are we using this evening to communicate with yourself to be?
eScribe.
eScribe. Okay, thank you, sir. I'm just curious through Your Worship to Jesse and his team, where would they put the most emphasis on in terms of where Orangeville can find savings and efficiencies throughout this? Is there certain areas that they think we have the most upside?
Yeah, so through the chair, it's a great question, and I think that some of the areas where we identified some potential, I guess, high impact in terms of resources and resource stewardship would be around procurement for sure. I think that that's an area where working with the your partner municipalities, looking at what are some of the common purchases that that are being made across the county, and understanding how can timelines and processes be structured in such a way to allow for some of that joint purchasing, joint procurement. If it's things like supplies for winter control or road maintenance, that's something that came up a few times in terms of an item or items that all the municipalities are purchasing, and could be streamlined in a way that potentially allows for additional bulk or additional collaborative purchasing. So that's certainly one of the areas where there's a good opportunity to find some sort of resource saving from that perspective. I don't know if Miriam or David had anything else that they would want to add to that.
I would just add to that through the chair. Some of the other things, like some of the working groups and things like that, those are really designed to share best practices and ultimately mitigate risk, which in the long run tends to reduce costs just because you get fewer unpleasant surprises.
Okay, Councilor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you very much for your presentation. I allude to the fact that you've mentioned on many, for many of the subjects, that Orangeville's pretty independent and got their own resources and aren't interested in doing a full county-wide participation. This service review seems to me to be more beneficial for the urban municipalities. So I know that this is just a study and a recommendation that you're presenting to county, but I would hope that our county representatives would take into consideration if a lot of these are enacted, and that the county takes on with the assistance of providing these services to the urban municipalities, that we, as one of the heavy municipalities that contribute to the budget in the greater amount, that we would be not paying for those services, that it would be a cost recovered to those municipalities, because that has me very concerned, because in actual fact it would mean that our taxpayers are paying for example, HR out of the town of Orangeville's budget and HR out of the Dufferin County budget, to which we already charge our taxpayers 50%. So it's just a comment, and I know it has nothing to do with this actual part, because that is getting more into the financial part. That is a comment that I'm just making because as you presented here, you mentioned many times it doesn't affect you. It doesn't affect you, meaning Orangeville, and that's where I have a little bit of a worrisome when this seems to be more in line with our urban neighbors.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. We have Councillor Deputy Mayor McIntosh and Councillor Post. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I go back to the fire thing. I did mention it a while ago that there used to be an organized Fire Chiefs Association that did regularly meet. As far as bulk buying, it was discussed at the time, and you know, there is an issue with that. Bulk buying in Dufferin County as compared to the City of Toronto, bunker suits. We may buy 15 in all of Dufferin County. Toronto may buy 1,500 a month. You know, it's a whole different ballgame, and we didn't really find the savings. But I just throw that out there that they do actually meet as a Chiefs Association, as far as I know, unless it stopped. But they used to.
Very good.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor. Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My comment was actually just in response to what Councillor Sherwood had said, and as the member of our council who sat on the working group for this project, I can assure you that throughout this entire process, it was one of the things that we talked about extensively, was making sure that these things were being done on a cost recovery basis, and understanding that the municipalities that required the services were going to be the ones that were paying for the service. And to the presenters today, I just wanted to thank you very much for all the hard work towards this program. Working as part of the working group was very insightful, and you brought a lot of great recommendations forward. I think perhaps the one thing that I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of was the opportunity to showcase Orangeville in the way that with the services that we already do offer. So an example that I'll use for that is with regards to the HR services. When it was suggested that we hire a consultant or a consulting firm at the county level, was there any thought ever put towards using Orangeville as that consulting firm and have the member municipalities in the rural areas pay for our area, pay for Orangeville to do those services for them? Because that was the one thing that I didn't see in the report that I was kind of hoping to see, because we do offer a lot of really great services in our municipality. We've got some really great talent in many departments throughout our municipality, and if we have the opportunity to perhaps increase somebody who's part-time to full-time and bill our services out to the smaller rural municipalities for things like HR or accounting, I would love to see it staying within Dufferin County rather than being farmed out to a consulting firm in the city or something like that. I'd love to see it stay local.
Yeah. So through the chair, so it's a great question, and it's a great comment observation. So in general, it was something that was discussed at a high level, and the examples that were discussed most specifically were IT, as well as to a lesser degree HR. And I think that the focus at this time is that there would need to be additional, I'll say, capacity building within Orangeville to offer this as a service to member municipalities. It is not as if we heard that there is a lot of excess capacity within the organization. So as a longer term solution, if that's something that council wants to consider and to perhaps suggest as a alternative to, as you said, keeping some of these services more within the member municipalities. It's certainly something that that could be explored, but based on our discussions and what we heard, it's not that's something that could be implemented sort of tomorrow, whereas the rural municipalities could go out and start to secure some of these services more quickly, and some of the activities that are associated with that recommendation are things that are more project-based when we're talking about HR, for example, developing policies and procedures. So I think that for something more intermediate term, it's absolutely something that the council may want to consider in terms of a service that's offered to some of your peer municipalities.
May I follow up there, Mr. Mayor, just for 1 sec? My comment was definitely in no way saying that we had extra capacity right now. It was more towards the fact that I think that we could build our capacity because we have that existing foundation, and by being able to build our capacity and then recover the costs through billing other municipalities for that service. Again, it's something that I would like to see eventually, and I know that that's not a short-term solution, but maybe more of a long-term solution. It is something that I would like to see going forward, is that we're keeping some of these resources within the municipalities, keeping it local, right? We preach the message of shop local, so let's do it wherever we can, right? So thank you for that answer. That answers a lot for me, and thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Taylor, do you have another question, or are you just logged in there?
No, Your Worship, I do have a question, if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So I guess for me, and maybe it's a commentary for council as well, but when I look through this report, I see 3 areas, and I love the procurement idea. I think that's something that we should be looking at. I think, candidly, the county does a great job right now in terms of what they're doing from a procurement standpoint, but we don't have that necessarily at Orangeville just yet. But 2 other areas, the recreation situation in our town has always been a concern of mine. Our council doesn't scream from the rooftops about it, but we do have other residents in Dufferin County using the facility. And, the financial burden is on the Orangeville taxpayer for that. And, my piece would be, and I don't want to cause a war with the rest of the regions in Dufferin County, but it would be great if there was more engagement and help, because we know that non-residents are using those facilities on a regular basis and enjoying them. And then the other one that I see a huge opportunity for us is the roads master plan. And as I understand it, the county will be coming out with that over the next 12 to 18 months. We'll see something along those lines in terms of a roads master plan, but there's significant opportunities, and Orangeville's in a very disadvantaged situation in that we actually have to deal with a few different bodies to be able to get things done. So we butt up against the Region of Peel. We actually have the Dufferin County situation, and then some other roads that are controlled by other municipalities, and we don't necessarily have control of them. So I'd love us to see some things. I'd like to see some roundabouts in this town and just some more efficiencies as we go. So I don't know. I'd love to explore this a little bit more, and I think it would definitely be a great thing for us from a cost savings initiative if it can work out for Orangeville, and it has to be beneficial to both. And I think that's what the rest of you are saying as well. So.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments, councillors? Seeing none, I want to thank the folks from Optimus for their presentation tonight. Very interesting, and hopefully we'll be moving forward, making things more efficient in our county. Can we have a motion to receive this report, please? Councillor Peters, seconded by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. All in favor? All right, thank you very much, the Optimus crew. Thank you for coming and joining us tonight. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Moving on to 11.2. Tonight we have Tara Lynn, Trade Development, Director of Trade Development, Mannequin Travel and Tourism. Tara Lynn, are you with us tonight?
I am. Hello.
Very good. Okay, well, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. As introduced, I'm Terry Lincoln-Opaski, and I am the director at Banneken, the Toronto-based firm who was hired to work with the town of Orangeville in creating this tourism strategy and action plan. So just a quick, pardon me, I'm managing two screens here. A quick introduction to sort of the process that we moved forward with here. If I can get my technology to work for me. Okay, so we began the process in May in developing the plan. It started 3 phases, started with background research. So we reviewed a number of reports already established with the town to get an idea of what the priorities were, you know, the assets available, that sort of thing. And then we moved into community engagement. So that included one-on-one phone calls with, I think, most of you, as well as a number of stakeholders and people throughout the community and from the broader Dufferin County. So phase 1, phase 2 obviously led to phase 3, which was the development of the final strategy and action plan. And with that, as you've probably read, we have about 20 recommendations, which include as well 70 detailed actions correlated to each recommendation. So just to have a look at, you know, where we are and what we're building upon and establishing the tourism strategy. I'm not going to be telling you anything you don't know here. Orangeville boasts a charming downtown. The Blues and Jazz Festival and Theatre Orangeville are 2 main tourism draws that a number of you had referred to. Public art, utility boxes, the tree sculptures. This is an area that represents great potential in terms of growth. Obviously, there's the extensive Parks and Trails network. We have the Best Western as the primary option for accommodation. And as many of you noted, we see Orangeville as a gateway to the broader Dufferin County. So let's just take a look really quickly at the SWOT analysis that we conducted. I won't go into too much detail. There is an exhaustive list that you'll see in the report, but just to touch on a few highlights. I think looking at the strengths, the established commitment to tourism development is certainly notable. Obviously, investing in the strategy in the first place shows some commitment and understanding to what tourism can bring to the community. And also the collaboration within the town is also notable between relevant departments. The economic development is well aligned with Parks and Recreation and the library, which sets us up for success. And the town is also invested in things such as arts and culture, Theatre Orangeville, the Blues and Jazz Festival, the culinary scene, which all support the town's attractiveness as a destination. Ultimately, we think that the town has a solid foundation of products on which we can build a successful tourism story. The well-maintained, beautiful, historic downtown and its accessibility from major markets such as the GTA, Guelph, Kitchener, Collingwood, you name it, is going to be key to a successful tourism promotion. To successful tourism promotion efforts. The established visitor center and of course a talented, progressive, creative community supports the appeal as a destination. On to weaknesses. I think there's a lot of opportunity for more collaboration between stakeholders and tourism organizations within the town and beyond, and we'll come to that a little bit later in more detail. Resources at the town level. The team at the town certainly does an amazing job with the time that they have to dedicate to tourism development, but there are resource limitations with no full-time dedicated commitment to tourism development. Limited accommodations options sort of impacts length of stay, particularly when looking at certain markets for people who are looking for, you know, well-rounded, multi-day artsy sort of experiences. There's some gaps in the year-round festival and events. So in the festival and events calendars, there's certainly opportunities to add new events or festivals to kind of fill that gap and create that year-round appeal. Downtown business hours and accessibility at peak tourism times, whether it be evenings and weekends, is something that we have looked at. Brand awareness and strategic marketing planning. So just looking at the lack of brand awareness or awareness of Orangeville as a tourism destination by key markets is another weakness. And finally, underdeveloped tourism collateral. And just to expand on what we mean there, Number one, the current presentation of maps, walking tours, and other itineraries doesn't adequately present an enticing experience, and the parks and trails maps are also underdeveloped. And I think it's also important to note that there is a lack of diverse representation in tourism promotional materials, so you're leaving behind the potential to attract diverse audiences. In terms of opportunities, allocating full-time staffing resources would allow for greater strides to be made in effective tourism development and marketing, supporting the tourism readiness of local stakeholders, supporting enhancements of their services, and that then enhances the on-the-ground experiences for visitors. Further investments in and development of arts and culture assets, particularly public art, we think that it will build upon what we think is the dominant tourism narrative of Orangeville as an arts and culture destination. Collaboration. As mentioned, a great opportunity here in a number of areas. So, firstly, creating cohesive, mutually beneficial partnerships between stakeholders, and, in the interest of building long-term growth and prosperity across the community. Also, cross-promotional opportunities, collaboration with neighboring municipalities that might have the same values or type of assets to increase or broaden Orangeville's saleability. And collaboration with Dufferin County on tourism development projects. For those of you who don't know, we also just completed a 5-year tourism strategy for the county. Inclusive marketing practices is another area we see opportunity in. Leading sustainable tourism development, social inclusion has to be a key element, not only in marketing and promotions, but also in including members of the community from Black, Indigenous, people of color, people who are differently able, the 2S LGBTQIA community. So just making sure that the community is fully represented in the activities, and that the target markets are also fully represented in the actions that are taken going forward. Tourism brand development, in looking at the weakness about this, there's great opportunity to build brand awareness of Orangeville as a tourism destination, the things that, make it so great and unique and, very accessible in terms of drive time to the GTA, to the Golden Horseshoe, Barrie, Collingwood. To positively impact visitor arrivals and local spending, and allow for effective and memorable marketing to grab these markets. And finally, enhancement to visitor center services. Obviously, the visitor center is a great strength for the town, but we see great opportunity to build upon the services in data collection to better understand who your visitors are, where they're coming from, why they're coming, and then broadening the visitor center services, taking some virtual or digital to make sure that we're covering all bases there. In terms of threats, limited investment will obviously result in limited growth of the local visitor economy. So we'll hope that remains a threat and doesn't come to life. COVID-19, as with anything, is a major threat, impacting the town's ability to host events, festivals, performances, and unfortunately may impact the presence of retailers and restaurateurs downtown, which then in turn impacts the tourism appeal and reasons for visitors to make the trip to Orangeville. And limited collaboration. I think that this is a really key element of this strategy, and having collaboration with other tourism and tourism adjacent organizations will build the efficacy and the strength of the strategy overall. All right. So, I think that what we know is that the first step to tourism success, we need to have buy-in. We need to have buy-in from decision makers, from local stakeholders, from residents, and we really want to have everybody on board to work together towards a common goal. So what is the common goal? Looking ahead to when the strategy has been carried out in 2026, where do we hope to be? And so as on the screen, I'll read it out for you. By 2026, the town of Orangeville will be a burgeoning tourism destination known for its unique combination of progressive community values and small town vibe, with both locals and visitors, which both locals and visitors look to for unique public and performing art experiences, culinary imbibement, and access to outdoor activities, knowing there is something to enjoy year round. So that captures sort of where we want to be, but the obvious question is, how do we get there? So I'm going to walk through a few areas of key tourism drivers where we see great opportunity. So public art, obviously we have the utility boxes, the tree sculptures, other sculptures throughout the town. And where we see room for our opportunity here is in new displays, whether in the form of murals, sculptures, or other unique pieces to build upon that creative narrative already established in the town. Arts-based events, workshops, these sort of things can also be conceptualized to draw the attention of arts and culture enthusiasts from target markets. One example that we've included in the strategy is an arts and nature program. And the idea here is that it could create a uniquely Orangeville experience in outdoor spaces. So incorporating public art displays in the parks and trail network to combine those two key elements of the Orangeville experience into one. As for performing arts, Theatre Orangeville, the Opera House, so well respected and well revered. So building upon the existing performing arts programming, we see the opportunity for Orangeville to work with local talent and venues to build programs for ongoing performances throughout the town, whether indoor or outdoor. So an example of a suggestion that we've included is a Performance in the Park Summer Initiative that would include ongoing entertainment schedule from June to August. As a suggestion. So not only would these types of activities entice visitors, it would also support the evolution of Orangeville's attractiveness, again, to that sort of target market arts and culture enthusiasts. As for trails and outdoor experiences, I'm sure you're all familiar that there's 20 kilometers of trails throughout Orangeville connecting 35 parks and Island Lake Conservation Area. And I think that one of the greatest opportunities we see here is creating comprehensive trail maps as an important first step to maximizing visitor access to and engagement with these local assets. And then, as previously mentioned, integrating public art within the trail network. As for the historic downtown, you have your beautifully maintained Broadway, an active BIA, historic homes and buildings, great retailers, great restaurants. And so what we see here is an opportunity to create compelling itineraries, combining the public art, the retail experiences, and using a step-by-step format in developing these itineraries that leaves no room for uncertainty among visitors, so they know where to go, how to get there, what there is to enjoy when they do get there. And another piece of this, which I'll expand on a little bit later, is integrating augmented reality to add a new dimension to the experience downtown, to public art, to the footsteps from our past tour. And I will come to augmented reality a little bit later. Culinary offerings. So currently, of course, Orangeville has the quaint cafes, the fine dining, the farm to table, and a number of culinary events. Again, an opportunity where we see building itineraries around food-focused events and experiences that kind of take visitors beyond what they might see otherwise. And then creating new activities and events based on the culinary experiences. So one example we've included is a teddy bear picnic experience. So setting up an event whereby local restaurateurs who might be interested in participating can sell box lunches for a set price. And then again, yes, a taste of Orangeville walking tour itinerary. So suggesting stops at different restaurants or what have you. As for festivals and events, you're doing well. There's a lot of really unique and successful events: Taste of Orangeville, Maple Syrup Festival, the Blues and Jazz Festival, Celebrate Your Awesome, and the list goes on. So looking at year-round options, filling in those gaps that I previously referred to. For example, a winter carnival. So, as of December 2020, there was nothing in January that really, to kick off the year to celebrate the winter. And we see that as a winter carnival is a great way to fill that gap. And then another opportunity is to look at the festivals and events that are taking place and how can you build a stronger narrative around those. So for example, with the Maple Syrup Festival, perhaps it's an opportunity to build an itinerary or a bingo or something that can be created to guide visitors to try different pancake experiences at different restaurants or what have you, and sort of integrating, building the narrative of the Maple Syrup Festival by integrating local venues in that way. All right, so this leads us to the strategic priorities. And we'll get into these a little bit, the recommendations with each on the next slide. Administration and operations, so these have been deduced from the SWOT analysis, from the findings that we came to, from the conclusions we came to, and we decided that, you know, where the needs are can be categorized into these 4 pillars. So looking at administration and operations, we're referring to the internal work at the town of Orangeville with regard to staffing, priorities, processes, that sort of thing. Branding and marketing, the work that needs to be done to effectively promote the town of Orangeville to prospective visitors. Tourism assets and experience development refers to existing tourism assets, potential for new tourism assets, and the act of combining various products to create experiences that will draw visitors to the town. And finally, infrastructure and investments, which refers to the presence of proper infrastructure, services, and investments necessary for a positive, well-rounded visitor experience. All right, so I won't go into every recommendation in great detail, but just as a general overview, looking at administration and operations, certainly hiring a full-time tourism and culture officer would help ensure the consistent oversight and effective management of tourism development, looking at stakeholder relations, spearheading collaboration, working on the marketing and content creation, grant applications, these sort of things. And I think it would position the town to see sooner ROI on this tourism strategy and action plan. Enhanced tourism-focused communication. So this is looking at the current arts, culture, and tourism newsletter and mandating that tourism be an active inclusion in each and every single mail out. And then also looking at the opportunity to launch a stakeholder-specific newsletter to share tourism opportunities and updates with stakeholders. So, you know, just to facilitate that ongoing, people looking out for opportunities to collaborate, this is where you might find it. The role of the visitor center, as mentioned, looking at collecting more data, age ranges, where people are coming from, and that will help us to better target our marketing and messaging. Launching a live chat function on the website as part of the visitor center services, and expanding the availability of services through digital kiosks and perhaps satellite locations, for example, at the Opera House during the summer months. New opportunities for community participation. We'd love to see the establishment of a tourism advisory committee to support and guide local tourism development, with a focus on diversity and inclusion, of course, to make sure that the community as a whole is represented on the tourism advisory committee. And then providing support to tourism related businesses. So that could look like training, workshops, events, and provision of resources, which you're lucky to have the Small Business Enterprise Center on hand to support in that way as well. On to branding and marketing. Defining a brand or a place identity for Orangeville as a destination will lead to far more effective marketing and promotion initiatives. So this would start with a destination branding exercise that would help establish a new visual identity, a tagline, and clear direction as to what are Orangeville's key messages and how can the town effectively distinguish itself from other communities as a destination in its marketing and promotions activities. Refreshing and expanding tourism collateral. This again comes to the point of updating Orangeville's photo and video assets. Number one, to capture the four-season appeal, and number two, again, to include diverse visitor segments. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it certainly helps. There's a good business case for it as well. And finally, making maps, itineraries, brochures, guides available in print and web format. And just to make sure that, you know, however people want to travel, the resources are available in their preferred format. Creating annual marketing plans, enhancing the web presence of the tourism theme, just to ensure effective engagement, blog content, itineraries, asset description, and activities and events calendar, that sort of thing. On to tourism assets and experience development. Of course, we want to maintain the public arts collections, the historic downtown, and build upon these. So identifying spaces that can be dedicated to public art, and you know, new displays launched, murals, sculptures, public engagement pieces. And when we say public engagement pieces, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the love sign in Toronto's Distillery District that everybody gets a picture with and then posts on social media, and then everybody else wants to get the picture. Something like that, that not only engages the visitor and creates a unique experience, but then also helps in your marketing and promotion. Again, building upon year-round events and activities, enhancing and expanding the library of tourism itineraries. If I haven't said itinerary enough, let me know, and we can do it one more time. Establishing links between the parks and trails. So again, coming back to the Arts and Nature program that we talked about prior, and developing the rail line into a rail trail should the opportunity arise, which I know is something that's kind of been on the table for a while. And then finally, back to the idea of integrating augmented reality experiences. Quick briefing on how AR works for those of you who aren't familiar. You typically need a third-party app, and then you can hold up your phone to a piece of art, a building, what have you, and it can come to life in some way, whether through an audio file, a video, a modified photo of whatever you're looking at. The Art Gallery of Ontario allows you to use it on certain pieces that you'll be looking at an 18th century piece of art. Hold up your phone, and then you get, through AR, you get a modern version of this piece of art. So it just adds a new dimension and a memorable experience to things that are already existing there. And that would take, there are a number of experts in AR and planners that can help optimize AR planning. And finally, infrastructure and investments. Really quick, just continuing to fulfill the wayfinding program that's in place. I think there's a good system in place right now, and just a few more modifications. Enhancing visitor-friendly infrastructure. So we're looking at accessibility ramps to retailers and restaurants, bike racks, public restrooms, water stations, that sort of thing. Carrying out recommendations from the Recreation and Parks Master Plan also fits here. So for example, the feasibility study for skate trail and Rotary Park, transforming Alexandra Park into a space for gatherings and special events, and finally a feasibility study for an arts and culture center. And it's the last one we'll touch on is the exploring the possibility for a boutique hotel. So determining the viability of a non-chain hotel presence within the town in hopes of bolstering the town's appeal for overnight stays. So in conclusion, really what I want you to take away from the strategy and from the presentation are firstly, that dedicating resources to carrying out the strategy and supporting local tourism stakeholders will support the efficacy of the strategy and action plan and the long-term tourism returns. Secondly, that leveraging and building upon Orangeville's existing strengths, the public and performing art, the historic downtown, the parks and trails, access to Dufferin County, this drives a lot of the recommendations that we just went through and the others that you'll see in the report. I also wanted to add that given the impacts of COVID-19, we should be looking at the initial 12 to 14 months as a rebounding period, as an opportunity to put a number of key pieces in place so that as we get back to some type of normal, whatever that might be, you're ready to hit the ground running. And that's it. Over to you. Thank you for your patience as we went through all of that.
Very good. Thank you. Well, good ideas. Thank you so much. We've got some questions from councillors. First off is Councillor Joe Andrews. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and I'd just like to thank Tara Lynn and the entire Banneken crew for what is, in my opinion, an outstanding report. I'm not speaking on behalf of my fellow members of council, but maybe I am. We have the privilege in our roles to receive a variety of different reports. Many of them are lengthy. This one here provides great value for us and our taxpayer, and I think that what we have is a document that, as opposed to something that's going to be put on the side of the desk, it is an implementation plan. It's an opportunity for us to look at how we end up benefiting as a community tremendously. Just a couple of thoughts there, and again, I'm most appreciative of your future of tourism, some of the tourism drivers, even the ideas of the culinary that is very much a part of our core activity in our downtown core, as an example. There you even referenced, of course, some changes that are happening from an AR perspective, QR codes, the opportunity to enhance the experience when you come into our communities like us. But I'm also most appreciative that you've talked about the rebounding economy. COVID, the repercussions are going to continue. We'll find out what the Premier has to say tomorrow. But at the same time, I think preparation for coming back and being a leader is going to be really important. And I'm again most thankful that you know, town staff had the opportunity to take a look at you know, getting some important information. This report here does provide that. Just as one other point that I wanted to share, and I do have a question very quickly. I think your SWOT analysis is also quite accurate of some of the areas of strength that we have within our region and our community, but some of the weaknesses, some of them are obvious, and for those of us who've been part of this community for a long time, we know what some of those weaknesses are, but I also appreciate some of the new ones that you also brought to the attention of council in this report. Just a candid question, Teralyn, regarding the impact of COVID. If we do not implement some of these activities or strategies in the next 12 to 24 months, what do you envision to be some of the repercussions?
I think it would just mean that it would, instead of looking at 2026 to fulfill the strategy, you'd be looking at a longer term, and you would just not be able to benefit, of course, from greater tourism initiatives as quickly. And I think that tourism, especially regional tourism, is a place where industry experts are saying this is where the great opportunity is. You know, people might be slower to travel internationally. People might not have the resources, financial or otherwise, to travel internationally. So we're going to be looking closer to home. We saw it over the last summer. You know, people taking road trips, more people renting RVs. People were looking for experiences closer to home. So I think that if it takes longer to implement those recommendations that were scheduled for the first 12 to 24 months, you're just going to miss the opportunity of reaping the rewards of, you know, whatever the impacts, I hate to say it that way, of reaping the rewards, but of whatever the rebound is going to look like, and the opportunities that are going to come with local and regional travel, there's just a greater potential to miss out on that.
No, I agree, and I think that the roadmap that you've provided here helps staff, and you know, potentially, if there is the intent of council to consider a full-time tourism staff member to implement some of these. So thank you very much again for your extensive report and the presentation tonight.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh, and then we've got Councillor Taylor and Councillor Post. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Worship. As Councillor Andrew said, very good, excellent report. I really enjoyed the presentation. It's an interesting times we're in. We don't want visitors to town right now. That's something we need in the future. However, we've got a lot of small businesses, especially on Broadway, that need visitors. We need people. So I would like to see a little more, maybe how to get the businesses more involved, because you know, those are the people that are hurting right now. Again, as far as tourism, I consider that, like was in the report, that our stores and small businesses are part of it. So thank you for the report.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you.
You're muted, Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, guys, I struggled a little bit there to get going. Thank you, Your Worship. I guess a few comments. I love the idea of the boutique hotel. If anybody's done any kind of traveling in major cities and you get the opportunity to stay at one, it's just a fun, fantastic experience, completely different. And Orangeville fits with that. That makes a lot of sense to me. The washroom piece has been brought up numerous times to me, and you're right. We don't have those facilities, and it's a shame that they would have to use our local businesses to do what's natural, right? Obviously, you talk about wayfinding, and I would suggest to everyone on council that our wayfinding is lacking. I did go personally. I thought that we should be going all online, and people would just find these things. The truth is, I don't think that's the case. When you come to the corner of Broadway and number 10, and you're coming right through town, it doesn't say welcome to me. It doesn't say come on in. You don't get a great view of what's in the town, and I think the idea of sharing more from a signage standpoint is absolutely key. So anyway, I'd love us to be able to lead this. Like, if I think about what our town should be doing, this is exactly the kind of thing that I think we should be doing as we go forward. And I guess my concerns would be to you, Terry Lynn, and my lack of understanding when anybody ever asks a local politician for money, and that's kind of what you've done here because you want to hire an incremental body, I almost thought I should count how many times you said, like, it got very, very clear that you wanted us to hire this incremental body to run this department, and I grasped that. You also mentioned what the salary would be, and I'm just curious what the ROI is on something like that. How do you determine that? How long would it be? What do we do? Like, we're cash strapped here as it is. I'm not saying I'm against it. I just love to understand it more and where we go. But I don't think, to my council members, I don't think we're ever going to solve this or make a difference unless we do that in terms of the recommendations. You need someone full-time leading it, but how do we pay for it would be my piece, and when would it pay back?
Okay, great, thank you.
Can she answer that, Your Worship?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thank you.
Question was on the money side. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure either. Okay. Yeah. Good. Really good point. I think that in terms, every destination is different, right? In terms of how long you're going to see return on that. But I think that ultimately, like you sort of alluded to, I mean, if you don't do it, it's going to be a lot slower to see any returns on the tourism investment. So specifics, I can't say. I don't know if Ruth wants to speak to the position itself and how she might see that coming to life. But I think ultimately, hiring somebody, having somebody take the lead, not only helps with the accountability, but also faster returns. Whether that means 5 years, 10 years, I can't say, but it does mean that you're going to be able to have the events that you need to fill the gaps. You're going to be able to facilitate that stakeholder engagement, the community engagement among retailers, to draw people to the area. You're going to have people creating content and marketing initiatives that are going to get people to come to the area. So I think that ultimately, it helps to ensure that there are greater tourism returns, and that we don't recommend this to every destination that we work with, I should say. It's not like every report that we do, we say you need to have somebody, to be leading this charge. It's the destinations that we see the capacity available, possibly, and also the potential to actually see that return. And given Orangeville's public art, given the festivals, the events, the potential in the tourism space, that's why we decided that in this case, it definitely makes sense to make the recommendation.
Very good. Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My fellow councillors have actually already made a lot of the comments that I was going to, but I do have to highlight, just for emphasis, that I'm so grateful to see such a strong focus on arts, culture, and festivals. It is an area that Orangeville is extremely strong, and coming out of COVID-19, it's one of the sectors in our community that's going to need the most focus. So I'm really happy to see that intense focus on that. And my final comment is, I'm just really grateful to see that you added in accessibility pieces, especially in our downtown core. And as the chair of the accessibility committee within the community, I just wanted to let you know that in your long-term recommendations, you had highlighted that stopgap was a potential. It's something that our accessibility committee is looking into already, and we've already done big strides. So we're actually hopeful that the rollout of that program will be as soon as spring or early summer of this year. And I note that it's highlighted in year 2 of the plan. So that'll be one thing that we can move forward quickly, because as you highlighted, accessibility to these items is so key when you're bringing people in from outside the municipality, and just making sure that they have access to all of the different areas in our community. And I will be working with Ruth going forward as well on highlighting some ways that we can better highlight those accessibility pieces with some of our businesses. So that's something we've got planned in the next coming weeks to start talking about as well. So that'll really help with the tourism piece as well. So thank you for the presentation. It was very comprehensive.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions, Councillor? Seeing none, Tara-Lynn, thank you so much. Looking forward to, I think Council's going to be implementing some of these things in the coming year or years. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 11.3, we have Mr. Rick Stevens from Orangeville Minor Hockey. Mr. Stevens, are you on the line?
Yes, sir, I am.
Hi, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I do have a question, or an ask, I guess. We're wondering if girls hockey and Skate Canada can also join at the same time. It's kind of the same overall presentation.
I don't see why not. Absolutely. So we'll combine 11-3, 11-4, and 11-5. Sorry, 11-3, 4, and 6. So Louise, are you on the line? And Michelle, are you there as well?
Hi. Yes. Yeah, I'm here.
Very good. Okay, Rick, you want to speak first, and then the
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So again, thank you. Michelle White is here from the Orangeville Girls Hockey, and Louise Johnson from Skate Canada, and myself, and Terry Shepard has joined, and he's my vice president. So the Orangeville Minor Hockey Association, the Orangeville Girls Hockey Association, and Skate Canada would like to thank the town of Orangeville, the staff of the recreation facilities, for making it possible for our association to provide and learn to learn skate programs for our members while we endure the pandemic. Medical professionals and years of extensive research prove that physical activities is extremely important for everyone's mental and physical health, and we are thankful to be able to provide opportunities for our members to participate in programs offering some form of normalcy during these extraordinary times. We are here in Elevation to ask for reduced hourly ice costs for minor registered sports groups that will allow us to continue to run our programs respectively. As you are aware, on December 14th, the area covered under the Wellington Dufferin Guelph Public Health Unit was placed in red control zone by the province of Ontario. Being in the red zone meant that additional restrictions on our programs and membership and the number of participants allowed on the ice at any given time is to just 10. It is the hope of all three organizations that once the current lockdown is lifted by the provincial government, we're able to reinstate our programs to their full potential according to the protocols for our region. Given the current situation surrounding COVID-19, the province of Ontario, we assume that our region will be removed from the current lockdown and will return to the red controlled zone. Under normal circumstances, Orangeville Minor Hockey, Orangeville Tigers, Skate Canada, ice rentals can include anywhere from 10 to 50 skaters per hour. Due to the restrictions, we're limited to 10 on the ice per hour. Our costs now have increased exponentially. Our plan is to provide all our members the equal opportunity to be on the ice at least once a week. In order to do this, we will need to rent a significant amount of added ice time from the town. With that said, it's not viable for our associations to continue to pay the full amount of $186.76 plus HST for a 15-minute ice rental and still offer our programming for the use of Ontario that they desperately need. We respectfully request that Council, the Town of Orangeville, reduce the cost of ice rentals by 50% for our associations, retroactive to December 14th when we entered the red control zone, and for the remainder of this season. We've each added a quick submission from each group, and we thank you for the time. So from Orangeville Minor Hockey, our vision is to foster, promote, and teach amateur hockey within the town of Orangeville and surrounding district, and to provide maximum opportunities for all eligible individuals to participate regardless of ability. The Orangeville Minor Hockey Association is a normal season would have roughly 950 members playing competitive and recreational hockey. This year, the main factor was the uncertainty of COVID-19, and we only had 674 register, so we're down about 30%. So we're aligned with the Tigers and Skate Canada, asking for the remainder of our season to be reduced. A few facts from us. The rosters have been adjusted from the average of 15 per team down to 8 to 10 for each birth year. We've had to add more teams, which graded 75 instead of 41. We needed more volunteers and coaches, trainers to be on the ice, which cost us quite a bit of extra money. We didn't go out and seek sponsorship from the community. We just didn't feel it was something we should do to our businesses when some of them are already struggling. We were unable to host our tournaments this year, so we lost 3 tournaments, which is our major source of fundraising. Currently, funding we only allow for right now, with the money we have left, we would only be able to let the kids on the ice about 8 more times per team if we don't get some kind of help from the town. We would require approximately 90 hours a week to allow each team or group to participate for the one time of 50 minutes. And this year, just so that you know, we asked the kids to reuse their jerseys and socks because we didn't feel that was, you know, feasible for the kids to get new equipment or new jerseys this year. A couple numbers, just so you know. We lost our registration revenue. We're down 172,000. With our tournament fees, with our revenue and our sponsorship, we're down another $84,000. So we're well over $200,000 that we normally would have, and we just don't have the funds. This year to date, Orangeville Minor Hockey has paid the town $193,266 for ice up until we could no longer go. Normal year would be somewhere around 600,000, but again, with our financial situation that we're in, we're just not going to hit that, and we'd like to keep the kids on the ice as long as we can. So that's what we're asking for. So that's it for boys, unless there's questions, or we can do the questions all at the end.
Yeah, let's let Michelle and Louise have a comment. Michelle, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Michelle White, and I'm president of the Orangeville Girls Hockey Association, or the OGHA. I know there can be some confusion between Orangeville Girls Hockey and Orangeville Tigers is what we're known as. But there's some confusion between Orangeville Girls and Orangeville Minor Hockey. And I just want to clarify that we are 2 completely separate organizations. We have our own executive, we have our own budget, and different governing bodies, which is the Ontario Women's Hockey Association. So just a lot of people think that we're affiliated with Orangeville Minor Hockey, but we're not. But we certainly do work collaboratively with them when possible, and this is certainly one of those occasions that we are. So there's a letter here. I'll just go ahead, I guess, and read that. It might be the best thing to do. So the Orangeville Girls Hockey Association would like to convey our thanks to the staff of the recreation facilities. We have a great deal of respect for the staff, and we have worked cooperatively with them to make our hockey programs run smoothly since September. The OGHA respectfully requests the Council of the Town of Orangeville to consider reducing the cost of ice rentals for our association by 50% during the period of time that we entered the red control zone on December 14th, 2019, and for the remainder of the 2020-21 hockey season. Once the provincial government lifts the lockdown, if allowed, we plan to continue to run skills and drills programs for all of our members following the protocols. However, we do anticipate that our operating costs will now increase significantly because of the restrictions permitting a maximum number of 10 skaters on the ice at a time. Our usual ice rentals include anywhere from 15 to 35 skaters per session. We want to be able to provide all of our minor members the equal opportunity to be on the ice at least once per week during this time. In order to do this, we may need to rent additional ice in the town. It has been conveyed numerous times during the course of this pandemic by many health professionals that physical activity is of the utmost importance for our physical and mental health. And we were excited in August when the OWHA informed us that we would be allowed to run programs for our members this year. We worked cooperatively and made great progress with the staff of the recreation department to get our programs up and running. In fact, we were able to get our members on the ice the second week of September, and because of their great efforts, we were able to keep them on until December 2030 when we moved into that red stage. Because last season ended abruptly on March 14th, 2019, and we were aware of many families facing financial hardships and uncertainties because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we offered a registration fee at the early bird rate to all members this season, regardless of when they registered. We also actually offered a discount as well for all returning players because of the season ending so early. Because of the decrease in the number of registrations and the lower fees offered to members, our revenue from registration only is down $32,000 compared to last year. Our overall revenue has been reduced significantly this year due to fewer sponsors and other sources, of course. The cost of ice rentals increased this season, and the cost for our officials, our referees and timekeepers increased this year because of COVID-19 as well. Every year, our association hosts tournaments, a major source of our fundraising. The revenue from these tournaments subsidizes our operating expenses every year and keeps the costs down for our entire membership. Without the tournament revenues, we would need to charge our players at minimum an additional $100 each to be able to run our programs. This year, because of COVID-19, we will not be holding any tournaments, and in fact, we anticipate that it will take another year or two until tournaments are allowed to take place again. Without any revenue from tournaments this year, we will be running a huge deficit. Each year, the OGHA spends approximately $250,000 on rentals at the town of Orangeville. And with this in mind, we are asking council to take into consideration the situation we are in now, and for the reasons stated above, reduce the cost of our ice rentals by 50% since December 14th when we entered into the red control zone. We will gladly suggest that during some blocks of ice rentals, it may not be necessary for the arena staff to flood the ice in between groups, which will help reduce costs for the town. We appreciate your time and consideration on this matter and look forward to your response and our continued partnership with the Town of Orangeville Parks and Recreation Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Louise, would you like to speak as well?
Hi there. So I'm Louise, and I've been part of Skate Canada Orangeville for many years, both as a coach and now executive member and as a parent. Skate Canada, really, I think in the town is, people think we're figure skating, and we are, but our primary thing is learn to skate. And we do it for learning to skate to play hockey, learning to skate just for leisure, whatever their goals would be, even to be a speed skater. So we've been part of the community for 60 years, and we take pride in offering quality and fun programs. Our skaters move on to going to our figure skating program, Orangeville Minor Hockey, they go to Orangeville Girls Hockey, or just to skate in the town public skating programs. We offer power skating as well for the hockey, and girls hockey and boys hockey. So this year with COVID, we had a lot of challenges that we had to overcome. And some of the things were we had to get new props for being on the ice. We still had to pay all our administration fees, and we actually ended up increasing our registration to cover the ice, knowing we could only have so many kids on the ice. So some of our programs through the fall ran at a loss. Some of our other programs actually were able to help us somewhat even out. But with all the extra, that was just to cover the cost of coaching and the ice, not any of our extra expenses like badges, cleaning supplies, etc. Further down on the page is what we offered through the fall. We did a five-week programs rather than registering for the whole season like we normally do. We did Can Skate, which is our Learn to Skate program. It says October, but we actually did a parent talk in September to December, and we had 20 to 25 skaters on the ice with 4 professional coaches. Our figure skating, we were only allowed to have 15 skaters on the ice, and we've done that since September. Power skating, we started running in September, and we would have 2 to 3 coaches on the ice for that. The challenges we continue to have is the cleaning and the buffer times in between. And like the other club, or the hockey, they have tournaments to make money. We have fundraising, and we just were not able to do that this year. And so if we reduce to only 10 on the ice, we're going to have to double our registration cost, and that then people aren't even going to be able to afford it because everyone's in a financial issues right now. And our figure skaters actually rely on our income from the Learn to Skate programs to actually be able to run and get the ice time they need. So we're hoping that when the lockdown does lift, we can get the kids back on the ice, but there's no way we can do it with the current rates. I think that's about it. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you, Louise. We do have all the councillors lined up here to ask questions, so yeah, I'm hoping we'll be able to refer this to town staff to come back to us with an idea of what cost. I think we've got at least 2 or 3 weeks now before we're going to get back to normal. Let's keep our fingers crossed, although there's an announcement tomorrow coming. So let's start with Councillor Peters. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Osmond, I'm sure there's a variety of questions. I guess I was lucky to be first in the queue here, but the key questions that I would have for the Recreation Department are, what is our current booking rate for the ice time? How full is the ice at the moment? What are the long-term sort of cost impacts of making this change? I definitely support the initiative and some reduction. These are the types of organizations that we want to thrive in our town. And I think we need to take a step back and look at it. And are there other associations? It's great that these 3 came together. If we're looking at ice time at large, is this something that needs to go across the board or not? Is this within the realm of some of the money we've put aside for COVID relief, that sort of thing? So where it comes from and how much it'll be, I think are obviously what we're looking for in terms of guidance from staff. But I certainly support the concept and would like to see as much activity as we can have in this town, given all the restrictions that we have right now.
Mr. Osmond, can you comment and maybe talk about timelines for getting a report together for council?
Thank you, Your Worship. First off, I'd like to thank the 3 groups for coming in and making their presentation. And just for clarity, because of COVID-19, really we're delivering a service right now to our own programs and these 3 organizations. So for the most part, because of COVID and because of the way the buildings operate, and because of the many restrictions on adult hockey and recreational hockey and so on for the adult side, we really our bookings are really restricted to these minor groups. We did that for a lot of reasons, and in order for these guys to deliver the programs, they needed more hours at lower numbers. So this is how we've been trying to accommodate the 3 groups that you have right now. In order, we'd have to do a full report, but just to give you a good idea, I mean, right now, for the remainder of their year, we'll say from January through until to the end of March or so, we're looking at about 9.5 weeks, and to date we have 1,274 hours on our schedule for these 3 groups as a collective, and that will be the number we're working with. And from a revenue perspective, the eye level, if you would, at this point, we would be going from roughly $250,000 revenue to $120,000 decrease. So we would see 50% of that would be $120,000, round figures, very high level.
Okay. Thank you. And again, in terms of getting back to us, Ray, in terms of a more formal report, or is that the extent of it? Where you said 1,274 hours. Looks like we're looking at around $100 an hour reduction request. So 127,000. Is that roughly what you're looking at?
That's roughly what we're looking at, Your Worship. It's pretty straightforward when you really look at it. We're dealing. We have a piece of business right now with 3 minor groups. That's our main focus, to get our kids on the ice. That's our #1 focus, which we've supported, of course, all along since COVID struck back in September, and from an ice perspective. And we've also got our own programs that are, again, very nominal, very minimal, but we still run programs. So these are our major users, and they do have at this point, and they could fluctuate. I mean, these guys will tell you they will fluctuate depending on what the needs are and so on. But they have booked right now, projected anyway, 1,274 hours, and they would pay, as Rick mentioned in the early onset there, their rate is $186.76 plus tax, and they're asking for 50%, which would be $120,000 revenue cut for us or support, if that's the case, for council to consider.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Mr. Andrews, Councillor Andrews, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'd like to thank the three representatives from the skate, as well as girls, as well as Orangeville Minor Hockey, Miss Mendelson, as well as Miss White, and Mr. Stevens, as well as Mr. Shepherd. Somewhat maybe selfish myself, having been a hockey coach and involved with hockey for a number of years. It was truly disappointing to see the impact of COVID, and I don't want to prolong the comment other than I have to again commend the organizations for their resiliency and adaptability in this particular case, and also compliment the town staff and under Mr. Osmond's leadership there to come up with some flexible ways of getting some youth onto the ice. I certainly will look forward to the report that Mr. Osmond will be providing, but I'm just curious to ask the organizations from your respective organizations outside of this region, do you have any reason to believe that some of those organizations have asked their respective municipalities for similar requests?
I actually, sorry.
Go ahead, Louise.
The president of the Skate Canada Orangeville actually just texted me. Her sister is part of the New Hamburg Club, and they actually reduced their rates by 50%.
Very good. Is that it, Councillor Andrews?
Yes, it is, Your Worship. I certainly was hoping to finish last season off, but of course COVID ended up squashing that. But again, I want to thank the organizations for coming here this evening.
Great. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to ask the money question too, so I got a grasp of that on the 127. That's a fair shake of cash as we think about it from a taxpayer perspective. But at the same time, I would like to thank Mr. Stevens, Ms. White, and of course Louise for coming and presenting. And I almost wonder if I'd need to declare a conflict. We certainly enjoy what Orangeville Minor Hockey has brought to my family. And I think the really sad thing for all of us is we've got young people that are sitting idly in our homes. And I don't want to overplay the comment, but it's a struggle. And it's a struggle for young people right now because there's just not a lot to do. And our family misses hockey greatly. So I don't know if there's a way that we can swing this. I'd love to get the report and understand how that would go, but I certainly appreciate what the three of you do on a regular basis for our community, and if I'm able to support in any sort of way, I will be doing so. So thank you for coming and explaining this to us this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. I too would like to thank these three organizations for coming forward to council tonight. I look forward to the report as well from our general manager. Through you, Your Worship, to Mr. Osmond, do we not have a men's hockey league that is also, in full use of our operations at this time?
Your Worship, through the Councillor Sherwood, not at this time. The men's hockey league opted not to because of the inconsistency, and because in the protocols from public health, there's no access to dressing rooms in our operation. So there's lots of things you can't do in these buildings, and this makes it extremely difficult, of course. And the flexibility that these three organizations have had to deal with, they've done a lot of great things, and they've had a lot of staff involved, a lot of volunteers involved in doing that, and which helped, of course, in getting their teams on the ice. And they've done this without using dress rooms, one or two from time to time for when they're pressed, but for the most part, they're all physical distance in the building around the boards. All of our bleachers are zoned out. The building is not the place you would normally look at if you go into a hockey rink. And from an adult perspective, it's very difficult to run the program and for them to have a consistent game or even actually play a game. So they opted in the early days not to do that, and they would look at coming back again next year, given that we get out of COVID hopefully in September.
Your Worship, just to follow up, please, if I could.
Yeah.
So that's where I was wondering where we were going to get the extra ice time to provide to these organizations, but obviously there's some availability there. My next comment would be to Michelle White, please, of the Orangeville girls hockey. I'm just wondering, I'm rereading your correspondence, and I'm wondering, please, it's just a little technical issue, if you wouldn't mind resubmitting your letter with updated dates. You mentioned that the town went into red control zone in 2019. That actually happened in 2020.
Oh, yes, of course. Sorry.
And
yes.
Same is in March. When the season ended in March, it did not end in 2019 and ended in 2020. And if you could just update that, only because the ask is that you're asking for reconsideration of cost recover going back, and I certainly I know you're not intending on us asking to go back to 2019. I'm just wondering if you could make that slight correction.
Absolutely, yes, and I apologize for that mistake. Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Post.
Thank you very much. Most of my questions have been answered. I just have one remaining. It was mentioned in all of the correspondence that they were looking for, that the three organizations were looking for retroactively back to December 14th. Would there be a number that's already been paid that we would need to look towards rebating them? And perhaps that's a question best asked to Mr. Osmond. And what would that dollar figure look like at this point from December 14th until when the lockdown happened? Was there the 90 hours a week that were discussed by Mr. Stevens, or is it a different number? Thank you.
Your worship, through to Councillor Post, I don't have that data here, but the numbers would be fairly low because when they triggered the red, a lot of the hours were dropped from the 14th through to the 23rd or end of our season before Christmas. So we would go back and look at the numbers, but they would be pretty nominal, I would think.
Thank you.
We would make that part of the report, of course.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
The boys hockey didn't play after the 14th, so ours is 0.
Okay, very good.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Good. Mr. Osmond, the other question I was thinking about is about if the province gives, you know, the clearance to go back on the ice. What about extending the season? Can you look at that? And is there an overlap with lacrosse that would be problematic if games are allowed to play again, both ice and lacrosse?
Your worship, depending on the what exactly ice would need or the users would need, we have, of course, on occasion extended our ice season for 1 rink, 2 rinks, depending on the demand. We could have 1 rink or 2 rinks that would run a little longer. As an example, the minor hockey would extend much longer than the other 2 groups. So in this case, you might have 1 rink that could satisfy the need. And we could probably be doing that depending on the demand. And lacrosse generally would start in April if the ice was off in April, and they would start on 1 rink or 2 rinks and ramp up from there. So it just depends that we transition from ice to dry floor. So it's a matter of timing and so on. So yeah, it just depends on what the demand is.
One follow-up for you, Mr. Osmond. There are many municipalities actually run ice all summer long. I know it's been talked about in Orangeville. Would this be a good year to think about that? Since there'll be a pent-up demand for ice, and have you thought about that?
At this point, your worship, no, I have not thought about going into the summer ice. Orangeville generally has never done summer ice, to my knowledge. Matter of fact, the 2 buildings you have, or the 2 ice services you have at the red and green rink, sometimes you would design a building to go for summer ice. We would have to be looking at how we would actually put ice on. Whether would it be a rink as an example? That building is a little different in terms of the insulation of that building versus the one that we have at the at Alder. So it just depends on what we can do with the ice services and the equipment we have on hand.
Okay, great. And I wanted to thank you and your staff. I know you've taken some initiative on outdoor rinks. Can you give us a quick update on what's happening on the outdoor rinks?
Thank you, Your Worship. The outdoor rinks, Idlewild is up and running. The other 4 we're working on is a struggle right now. The guys are in again tomorrow morning at 4 o'clock, waiting for temperatures to drop, and we're hoping that we'll have ice up and running sometime later in the week on the other 4 surfaces.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
If I may, through you to Mr. Osmond, could you also, Mr. Osmond, Laura, in a public forum, just speak about some of the ponds around town and what people are doing? And I think there's a confusion out there that they think that it's a town initiative for these ponds, and I'd just love for you to comment publicly on that if you could.
Well, Mr. Jones can speak on the stormwater ponds, given that he actually is under his jurisdiction, but he's a big concern, so I'll leave that over to Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Osmond.
Jones.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Taylor. Yes, there seems to have been considerable activity on the town's stormwater management ponds with people looking to get out and get some exercise, as we've noted. There's a great need for. However, the town's stormwater management ponds are not a place to play. They are not safe. The water levels can fluctuate in the ponds, and because of that, the ice conditions are not stable. People should not be on stormwater management ponds because they are not safe.
Okay, thank you. And
Mr. Jones.
For those of you that didn't know, there was a young 11-year-old boy that drowned in Milton before Christmas, falling through the ice on a stormwater management pond. So it's a real concern. So I'll have a message out to folks in the town. Be very, very cautious when you're out skating. We've got Deputy Mayor McIntosh. Your wish to speak as well, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you. Real quick, I was just wondering if that high-level number that Mr. Osmond gave us could be put in our budget. I certainly support this idea, but I'd like to know where we stand as far as our budget. I know we have some discussions on Thursday, and I was just wondering if those figures, even though they're high end, if they could be put into our discussion. Thank you.
Well, I think we probably need a motion at this point to direct Mr. Osmond to come back with a report on the request from these 3 organizations and any other issues surrounding those, and maybe a comment is about extending the season, if that's possible as well, maybe as part of the report. So could we have a motion on that? Deputy Mayor McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Andrews. Any further comments, councillors? All in favor? All right, Mr. Osmond, you got your marching orders? All right, and I guess tomorrow morning we find out more from Premier Ford, but at this point, is it the 26th of January that this initial lockdown was over? 26th?
That's correct.
And what's the scuttlebutt? The expectation is it's going to be extended?
Yes, Your Worship, from my perspective, yes, it very much so looks that way, that it could be extended. Fingers crossed, but the numbers are dictating otherwise, I'm afraid.
I did check today, Wellington Dr. Guelph's website, Public Health. Orangeville was down to 52 cases. There was 64 on Monday, I think, or on Friday, so it is coming down in Orangeville. Let's hope it continues in that direction. Okay, so thank you very much for joining us, Rick and Michelle and Louise. Thank you for your presentations. All the best.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, if I can just clarify one thing. I just want to let the councillors know that when you go back and discuss this and move forward, or, hopefully it comes with a positive for us. But if we don't get some help, I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that Orangeville Minor Hockey will probably won't be fulfilling our contract till the end of the year. If we do get some help, we can probably go into April. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, Rick.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Back to 11.5, Alethea O'Hara Stevenson is with us tonight. Alethea, go right ahead.
Good evening. Good night, Mayor Brown, Deputy Mayor McIntosh, councillors and staff and special guests. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you about DCCBA, otherwise known as Dufferin County Canadian Black Association. I'm just going to quickly try and share my screen. Perfect. So I wanted to share with you the newly formed Dufferin County Canadian Black Association, and it's an association that was officially launched, registered June of 2020. And before I go into the meat of the presentation, I'd like to share with you some stats just to put things into context. So the current population in Dufferin County, based on the 2016 census, if we're looking at 60,000 for the total population in Dufferin, the total number of Black in Dufferin County registered at 1,595, and for the town of Orangeville, the Black population is roughly 2% of the 28,900 population. Now we know that the population has increased over the past 4 years, and if we look at previous historical numbers at a rate of about 2%, the numbers have significantly increased. So that is just to put things into perspective and context for you. So the backdrop of the association essentially was formed following the many discussions with community leaders and stakeholders about the growing Black population in Dufferin County, and Black includes those of African descent, as well as Caribbean and from the Latin diaspora. The idea is to provide a voice, advocacy, safe space, along with educational programs, support services, community outreach, scholarship opportunities, benefiting families and businesses within Dufferin County. The association is committed to being a true community partner, working with other established agencies to bring value to the Dufferin community. The association is inclusive and welcoming to all, and I know I've received this question a number of times, why the Black Association? Despite the name, we are an inclusive organization providing valuable service to the broader community. So anyone is welcome to participate in our programs, volunteer, share their knowledge, share their expertise, etc. We are a registered nonprofit organization, and we officially launched November 16th, 2020 of last year. And I'm very excited to share that we've had a number of successes that I will touch on later on in the slides. So the mandate of the association is essentially to provide leadership for the continued development and enhancement of the Black community through civic engagement, education, programs, and services, and to advocate for equity and well-being for the Black community in Dufferin County. We're to be a central hub for resources, tools, and programs that are unique to the needs of the Black community. Our vision is to develop and foster a socially and economically equitable group that will continue to contribute to the growth and development in Dufferin County and Canada, to have a strong focus on youth achievement and excellence, to partner with all levels of government, businesses and corporations to bring awareness and partnering on issues that impacts the community. And of course, our values, are around advocacy, excellence, education, and integrity. Our next slide highlights our current executive team, Gear Harvey, who is no stranger to the Dufferin County community. He is currently counselor at St. Dufferin District High School and has been active on a number of other boards and committees in the Dufferin County area. Jordan Stevenson, likewise, is also no stranger to Dufferin County and is very active with our youth in not just Dufferin County, but also in the GTA core. And of course, myself, no stranger to Dufferin County, having been involved in a number of communities and committees in the Dufferin community. We also have an outreach team, which includes, again, should be very familiar faces, Phil Dewar, former owner of the very successful Saliva establishment, Althea Casamento, again, who is also another strong leader in the community. And I'll touch on the community outreach team and the value that we provide later on. Some of our successes to date, we've had a number of different organizations and groups reach out to partner and be sponsors of the association. So we've got the Upper Grand District School Board, who's a strong supporter, of course, the town of Shelburne, Dufferin County, who was one of the very first individuals that we presented to, the Museum of Dufferin, Flato Development, Inc., who is a developer, Benjamin Law, Shelburne Public Library, and of course, Dufferin Spotlight. Some of the activities that we have scheduled with the association, starting off in actually January that just passed, we had a number of, we had the personal branding session that is under our series called Ask the Experts. And that session took place January 5th. And I am very excited to share that that event was a huge success. These series are free, so anyone can register and benefit from the value and the services that we're providing. We had over 30 individuals registered for this inaugural event, and the feedback has been extremely positive. And so that is something that we're quite proud of to be able to achieve as our first official event. A number of other events that we have scheduled, of course, we have financial literacy, we have talking about real estate investing. So just to provide that extra value add to the community. As we build out our leadership team, we want to be able to focus on adding some more value to the community as it relates to businesses as well. But this is just to capture some of the highlights of what we have captured. Of course, in partnership with the Museum of Dufferin, we're working on this year's events, which will include a flag raising ceremony, which will likely be virtual, as well as a panel discussion that will take place on February 20th. Future events will include, of course, financial lit, coding, and tutoring. So one of the things that is important to us is to be able to provide scholarship opportunities for post-secondary education. And so we have been very fortunate to be able to partner with a number of organizations, both in Dufferin County and beyond, to provide scholarships. And we've had scholarships ranging from $500 up to $2,500. And one of the scholarship was the Bale Hill Scholarship, which is through the County of Dufferin. Flato Development, Inc., Cariati Law, Fieldgate Homes, and we have our DCCB, a flagship award, which is centered around Black excellence, and that will be our flagship scholarship. And that scholarship itself will include funding that the town of Shelburne, member donations, partner registrations, etc. So we're very excited with the number of accomplishments and achievements that we've had to date. The scholarship portal is now open and will run until May 17th. And so why is it important that I'm talking about scholarship? It's important to know that, especially from a Black youth perspective, based on the 2016 StatsCan report, many Black youth want to pursue, especially Black male, pursue higher education. But one of the factors, the impeding factors is cost. So one of the reasons why we put a strong focus on scholarship is to be able to provide opportunities where more Black youth can participate. And if we look at some stats here again, so the 2016 stats, although 94% of Black youth aged 15 to 25 said that they would like to get a bachelor's degree or higher, only 60% thought that they could. When we look at the Black population in Dufferin County, it is the largest visible minority population. And so it is critical that we also take note of that and provide activities and events that will address this need. If we also look from a future planning perspective, we've got a large portion of the population that is between working age and school age, so between 15 and 64. And so again, when we're talking about future planning and investment, especially investing in our youth, it is critical that we are putting on services, activities, and events that will set our community up for success. So how will the town of Orangeville benefit from activities? As I alluded to earlier, our programs, events, activities are inclusive for all. All students will be able to participate. For example, the Ask the Expert session, it was open publicly and everyone. We had a variety of experiences, different participants coming on board and participating in the very interactive session. All of our community members can register for the programs. We also have, one of the things that was critical for this association is to be able to be a central hub where community members can access information. For example, jobs. We have a job portal, and so far we've had a number of individuals in the community, Black individuals, who have been able to access job opportunities through our job portal, simply because we now have that central repository where we are collecting information from various sources and making them accessible. Likewise, some of the lessons learned from especially the COVID-19 pandemic, and as well as the tensions, the racial issues, and the marches that took place in 2020. We did not have a central repository or a central space where community members can receive information, likewise where we can share information to the diverse group. So we've had a number of individuals able to participate and receive information through this essential repository through our news outlet on the association website. So again, lots of great successes and a lot of great value to the Dufferin community. Businesses are able to post their jobs on our website, and again, goes a long way in helping businesses as well as the county and the town of Orangeville meet some of their diversity and equity needs that they have put forward. So in 2020, some of the things, we've heard through the various town halls, Zoom meetings, marches, etc. We've heard that community members need a safe space to learn, share, and gather relevant and important community information. Individuals want to be able to access jobs and volunteer opportunities, especially from the Black community, the Black community, to be able to have those opportunities where they can participate. Safe space, again, is another huge criteria to be able to have a sense of community and belonging, a space that is culturally relevant, and the Dufferin County Canadian Black Association meets all those needs. So what does partnership with the association look like? Again, it's partnering with us to be able to provide workshops, and we're currently in discussion with Georgian College to be able to put on some of these events. Access to programs and events such as the Ask the Expert series, again, providing value add to the Dufferin County community. Or students will be able to participate in the many volunteer opportunities as we start to post them on our website. So again, if organizations, the town has volunteer opportunities that they would like to get out, and in particular get out to the broader and diverse community, the association can provide that outlet. The community outreach team that I spoke about earlier, again, with our combined experiences and knowledge, we are able to provide workshops and speaking engagements on anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and Black History Month in particular, to the various organizations in Dufferin County. The scholarship opportunities, again, which I suppose individuals in the community can avail themselves to the many scholarship opportunities that we have, and again, is currently up and running on our website. And so one of the great things we have been able to do is to identify scholarships, particularly for Black youth, and we've also been able to extend scholarship that is to a broader demographic, to BIPOC individuals. Job opportunities I spoke about earlier, cultural programming and education, again, much like Black History Month, we are able to partner with various organizations, and for example, with the Museum of Dufferin, to provide relevant Black history or cultural events. One of the other great things so far is a number of the school boards or individuals from the 2 school boards have reached out to see how we can partner to be able to provide much needed value to their school population. So a lot of great accomplishments and successes to date, and we look forward to being able to continue working with all of these organizations. Partnership benefits. So in order to partner with, for example, the town of Orangeville, it allows you to meet your diversity and inclusion goals by ensuring that all community members have an equal opportunity to access information. It's an opportunity to support and partner with your soon to be established diversity and inclusion committee in order to meet your committee's goals. Opportunities to share your news on our community spotlight page. As I mentioned it before, jobs and volunteer opportunities. We can provide a direct link to your town website listing on our business directory page or partner page, and current news delivered to your inbox. One of the other great successes so far is, we've got our newsletter subscription, and so far we have close to 150 subscribers since we launched on November 16th of last year. And last but not least, in terms of partnership benefits, is the future value, the investment in our community and the next generation by way of these programs, by way of the number of scholarship opportunities that is available. So what is my ask? So my ask essentially for tonight are 3 things. So first is for the town of Orangeville to register as a partner on our business registration page to show your support and take advantage of the many opportunities that are available to share information with your diverse community, and again, helping you to meet some of your diversity, inclusion, and equity needs. 2, list DCCB or Dufferin County Canadian Black Association as a resource on the town of Orangeville page. And again, it's another way of getting information out twofold to your community and promote diversity and inclusion as well. The third ask in support of our community's diversity is the ask is to raise the Pan-African flag for Black History Month in the town of Orangeville and formally declare Black History Month in February. So for number 3, this is something that the county has already done. The town of Shelburne has already declared Black History Month and raised the Pan-African flag last year for the very first time. So we're asking that the town of Orangeville also takes part in recognizing the significant contributions of Black individuals in the town. And just to highlight, the town of Orangeville specifically has at least 5 identified Black-owned or operated businesses. And so that is a significant achievement for a population of 28,000 and a Black population of, I believe it was 500 and change based on the 2016 census. So there is evidence, there is need to recognize and support these initiatives. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you, Alethea. Yes, we have a number of councillors wish to ask questions. Number 1 is Councillor Sherwood. Go right ahead.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you very much, Ms. O'Hara-Stevenson. First of all, for spearheading this association and getting it up and running. It sounds very encouraging. I noticed you had a couple of asks there. One of the things I wanted to ask, I do have 2 questions. So one would be to our treasurer. It appears to me Ms. O'Hara-Stevenson is kind of alluding to that perhaps we consider some type of scholarship funds, and I'm wondering if the treasurer could maybe advise, would this organization qualify if they were to apply through our community grants? Do they fall under the criteria of that?
Madam Treasurer.
Through your worship to Councillor Sherwood, it would depend on some of the criteria that is laid out in our policy, but based on what I'm hearing tonight and based on just the presentation that was given to council, I would encourage this organization to apply, and then once we receive the application and based on the strength of the application, I would be able to provide you further information.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I thought, Madam Treasurer. So, Ms. O'Hara-Stevenson, perhaps you could reach out to our treasurer or on our website to look for the community grant application. And then my next comment is, and I'm not sure what staff member is going to jump in on this, but you are asking for us to fly the Pan-African flag for the full month of February. Do we have any other organizations that have also requested flag flying in February, because we would want to share that with other communities as well? So I don't know which staff member, would that be?
Councillor Sherwood is one of my concerns, but you know, when this happens, town staff works it out, and we will provide the appropriate response. But Andrea Shaw's not on board tonight, but I know she's keeping the proclamations, and we'll have to get back to you, Alethea, but I'm certainly supportive of this myself. Councillor Sherwood, anything further?
No, Your Worship, I just wanted clarification about the flying of the flag, just to let you know that if we do fly the flag and it only ends up going up 2 weeks, it may be because another organization has also celebrates the same month.
Very good.
That is fair. Thank you.
Councillor Andrews.
Well, thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you and congratulations, Ms. O'Hara-Stevenson, for the launching of your organization in our community. I also want to thank you for our correspondence that we've had prior to this on the idea of some scholarships, and I know that many members of our community will, I'm hoping, step up. To the point that Councillor Sherwood was talking about regarding Black History Month, wearing my other hat, I've been fortunate to have a kind of what I call a roving display of some Black history that is really, really visually impactful and important. I'm just thinking maybe down the road that maybe a use of our atrium might be also another location for some opportunity. I know in COVID restrictions at access to, of course, the atrium and town hall are certainly very much known, but maybe in a future year might be something to consider. And I was also very pleased to hear as part of your presentation tonight about the embracement of other members of our community. And I'm wondering if you've had the opportunity of maybe reaching out from a collaborative point of view, some of the other associations that exist within our community. My thought is from the point of view of maybe some space that you were talking about, some community space. And I know that you know, there may be some, and again, I'm not stepping out of my role here, but I just thought that, you know, there may be some space that could be available at some point to community organizations. And I just thought that, you know, that might be something for you to reach out to some town staff through the town clerk that might be helpful.
Great feedback. Thank you for sharing that. I have had the opportunity to collaborate with a number of other associations in Dufferin County as a whole, and many have offered space as well as partnership opportunities. So I will definitely reach out to town staff for additional information and support, but I am definitely pleased to have the support of some of these associations in Dufferin County already. So thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Hi, Althea, nice to see you again. I wanted to share, I was reading your presentation over the weekend and it struck me how well thought out it was, and obviously the heavy hitters that you have on that committee. And I started to brace myself because I thought we are going to be up for a huge ask. So I had to flip ahead and see what you're asking for, and your ask just isn't of significance at this point. It's, I think it would be an embarrassment for us not to be a part of this and help. But I guess my piece is I'm wondering what your plans are in the future, and it looks like you've just done step one of a large stair, and part of this is probably a public relations maneuver on your part. But I think this council has been supportive of these things in the past. I'm just curious where you're going to elevate this to longer term. I think Councillor Sherwood made an inference that maybe there might be something larger. Is it just a tuition piece, or is there something bigger down the road other than $245? We just got asked for 120, so 245 is pretty refreshing.
Great question, and thank you for the opportunity to answer that. There is the opportunity to apply for the grants, and that is something that is on our agenda. The ask of 240 is to be a partner with the association, and so strategically, again, it provides opportunity for the town of Orangeville to support the association, to be able to communicate and share information to your diverse population. So above and beyond that 240, we will be going to the application, through the application process with Dufferin County. What is our larger plan and objective? Obviously, with COVID-19, we're focused on trying to do things that we don't need to have a physical presence or footprint, and that's why we focused on the scholarship, because that's something that we can execute on without having to have a physical presence. Longer term, we want to be able to provide further opportunities where we're developing our youth. So we have lots of youth with the entrepreneurial mindset. So to be able to develop them and provide those services, those mentorship opportunities to guide them. Likewise with businesses, we have a number of businesses as well in the community. When you look at, again, the town of Orangeville, we've got 5, known Black businesses. So to provide the opportunity for education and advice so that they can scale up their businesses. Likewise, it's the same thing in the town of Shelburne. We have a number of businesses, Black owned or operated businesses in Shelburne. So the idea is with the funding to be able to provide those financial sessions, those strategic lessons, bringing in experts from the community to be able to provide that value add to those businesses, and again to be able to level up the community so that we are sitting from a position of equity and to be able to continue to grow and in turn contribute to the success of the town of Orangeville and of course Dufferin County. So there is a longer and strategic vision. We are just at the baby steps, the first step literally. And part of that too is to be able to build out the rest of our leadership team. Right now we are purposely very small because we want to set up the organization for success and eventually apply for charity status. So we have lofty goals, but we're taking our time and due diligence to make sure that we're doing things right.
That's great. Orangeville's changing, Althea, and you're part of it, so thank you.
Okay, Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Alethea, thank you so much for always working so hard to move forward the message of diversity, inclusion, and equity in our community. You're always busy with something doing that. Most of my questions were already answered. I would like to put a motion on the floor right now, though, to move forward the 3 asks that are printed in your presentation, including having the town of Orangeville register at the cost of $240 and listing the DCCBA as a resource on the town of Orangeville website, as well as the raising of the Pan-African flag for Black History Month in February, pending, of course, that it's open to do so. And I would also ask, Alethea, if it's possible, can you provide the flag to the town of Orangeville? With other organizations, we have always asked for that. I know, being a part of Celebrate Your Awesome and wearing a different hat for a second, we provided the pride flag to the town to ensure that they had it on hand for that. So I would ask that you could do that, and I'm happy to put that motion on the floor for those 3 things, and I would just look for a seconder.
Councillor Taylor, seconded. Any further conversation? All in favor?
Yes.
All right, Alethea, thank you so much for your presentation tonight, and looking forward to more good things from this organization. Thank you.
Great, thank you everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, folks, we're going to take a 5-minute break here, and we'll see you in a few minutes. First item is this is a letter, notice of termination from the Orangeville-Brampton Railway Access Group. Can I have a motion to receive this letter, please? Councillor Andrews, second by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. Any commentary? Anybody want to make a comment or ask a question about this at this moment? Okay, let's have a motion to receive it. Thank you. Next item is the Tourism Strategy Action Plan, which we listened to tonight. Again, motion to receive, please.
Oh, it's more than that.
Oh,
Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Put it in your agenda there.
My apologies. Hang on, let's keep this opened up. This is a presentation, is it tonight?
And the report with respect to adoption of the strategy.
Right.
And that council direct the Economic Development and Culture Office to begin implementation of this strategy as part of its annual operating work plan.
Okay.
And that staff report annually on the implementation progress of the tourism strategy.
Okay, so let me read this out, folks. Sorry. That report CMS 2021-001 dated January the 11th, 2021, regarding the tourism strategy and action plan, which is item 202, 2021 action plan for the years 2021 to 2026 be received. And that the tourism strategy and action plan prepared by Bannock Travel and Tourism be adopted, and that council direct the Economic Development and Culture Office to begin implementation of the strategy as part of its annual operating work plan, and that staff report annually on the implementation progress of the tourism strategy and action plan. Okay, can I have a motion on this? Councillor Peters, second by Councillor Post. Any questions? Councillor Sherwood?
Yes, Your Worship. So just to be clear, we're approving the recommendation, but the discussion of the full-time employment will happen in budget, correct?
That is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Is that clear? Let me add you in. Any other questions, councillors? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Next item is interim borrowing.
No.
Sorry.
Nope.
Regulatory bylaw 12.3. Let's just get that opened up. Okay, so this is the Clerk's Department's list of workflow for the next year and a half or so, and it reads the report CPS 2020-016 regarding the regulatory bylaw review work plan be received, and that council directs staff to report back on the various regulatory bylaws in accordance with the following schedule for the remainder of the term of council, subject to approval of the staffing resources identified in Clerk's Division's 2021 budget. Could we have a motion for this item?
Could we, are we going to be able to ask questions?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Councillor Taylor, you wish to make the motion?
Sure.
Okay, Deputy Mayor McIntosh, you wish to second it? And then we'll
I have a question.
open it up for questions, yeah. First one that's registered here is Councillor Peters. Right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we've talked about bylaws a lot this term, but in my view, there's one that's missing from the list that we haven't sort of brought to the top here, and that's the tree cutting bylaw. This is something that previous councils tried to implement, or should I say staff proposed, but it was rejected by the council at the time. I'm not sure if it falls to infrastructure services or community services, but as you know, we're all trying to increase the canopy in town. Municipally, that's being taken care of with our tree policy and our canopy target, but privately, many municipalities have a bylaw to regulate tree cutting and planting in lieu and compensation and that kind of thing. So just wanted to toss that out there as a potential addition to the list and to clarify who it might fall to from a general manager perspective.
Sure. Do you wish to?
Deb Jones.
Mr. Jones, go right ahead, sir.
Through your worship to Councillor Peters, my recollection is that this was brought up in the past by a member of council, and the council of the day did not support it. If this is something that did indeed move forward, it's something that we would have to discuss internally with respect to who would look after it. I mean, right now, community services looks after the trees in the parks. Infrastructure services looks after the trees that are along the boulevards, and as well all the infrastructure that's on public property. But once you get onto private property, it's a different animal. So I think that we would have to discuss this internally, determine which department it would most appropriately fall to.
If I could follow up, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, great answer.
Through you to Mr. Jones, not to put you on the spot, but do you know, perhaps in your opinion, the research and work that was done on it previously, would it get us the majority of the way there, or is this an exercise that would have to be started from scratch?
To be honest, I don't specifically recall. It was some time ago that it was discussed. We'd have to pull out what was done in the past and look at what other municipalities are doing and determine what the best practices were at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you'll push that ahead with Mr. Jones, Mr. Peters? Is that right, Councilor Peters?
Sorry, I missed that.
You'll continue discussing this with Mr. Jones, Councilor Peters? And
I can. I wonder if it's prudent to list it while we're discussing the bylaws so that it maintains, some level of priority in the discussion.
Okay.
To me, Your Worship.
You're next, Councilor Taylor. Yeah. Go ahead if you want to weigh in on this.
Well, I'd still like to be in the queue, but I wanted to weigh in on what Councillor Peters is speaking to, if I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah. My understanding is we've pre-aligned on these things, and this is set up for staff's time. And, these were the items that we thought should be in 2021. So if there was a tree cutting portion that would come in, I think it would fall under 2022 or 2023 as opposed to 2021. And I don't object to that, but as I looked through this list, and I did have one question about it, but I'm not sure what you would remove based on the ability of staff to get to it. So I'm certainly supportive of what you're saying, Councillor Peters. I don't think it goes into 2021.
Yeah, and I do recognize the staff time involved, and the fact that I didn't make our list when we discussed bylaws earlier is perhaps on me for not bringing it up. But I guess the piece that I want to emphasize with this is the more years we don't have this bylaw, it will affect our goals as a town to hit our canopy and carbon and other targets. So this one does have a bit of an immediate impact, and so I guess the question would be, when might it fit in? And that's a question for staff, but maybe that request becomes part of the motion. I'm not suggesting this has to be a 2021 item, but some of these bylaws are scheduled for review in 2027, and that's certainly too far down the line if you ask me.
Just to be clear, Councilor Peters, you're asking for the town to put a bylaw forward that controls the cutting of trees on private property. Is that right?
Correct. To some degree, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but I think maintaining the canopy and the benefit of those trees is really a community service, and regulating it is being done by a lot of progressive municipalities.
Okay, well, I think there needs to be some public engagement on that item myself. But at this point, I don't know that we've got enough information to put this on this docket. Anybody else wish to weigh in? I'm kind of aligned with Councilor Taylor on this. We've come up with this list, and the town clerk is delivering this to us now. I don't see a change right at this moment, but I would encourage you to continue the dialogue with Mr. Jones and maybe come back to us. Maybe we can add it on to the end of the list, but once we have a little bit more information about it. That would be my recommendation.
I can pursue it separately.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so any other questions? We've got Councillor Taylor, you wish to ask another question, I believe.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. And admitting my, I don't know, mental lack of capacity here. For the life of me, I do not remember Montgomery Village. So through you to the clerk, if I could, can we just remind me? I've got everything else, but I just don't remember what we're doing in Montgomery Village.
Certainly, Councillor Taylor. It actually ties in with the review of the traffic bylaw because there's a separate bylaw that deals with parking in that particular area. So the idea is to put everything under one bylaw that deals with any traffic or parking related issues.
Yeah. Thank you. Very clear. Thank you.
Okay. Any other councillors wish to speak on this matter? Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not sure I'm showing up on your list.
No, you're not.
I don't know how Councillor Peters beat me, but I was pretty quick with the click. Anyway, I want to talk about the election sign bylaw. I think that's, and the clerk can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know last council tried to do it and they were too close to the election. So there is a, excuse me, a time limit of some type where you can't do anything with the election sign bylaw. So I didn't want to leave that till the end of the year because it would be too late.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor McIntosh, I can assure you that that particular bylaw is on our radar for the first half of 2021. And at worst case scenario, it will be presented in the fall, but our plan is to have it in place prior to getting into 2022. And typically, I think, Mr. Deputy Mayor McIntosh, I think you're probably referring to the fact that in some cases, some municipalities actually put into place when you can have the signs up, and that's usually tied to the period of which when you can file a nomination or when nomination day is. So we'll be looking at those particular timelines within the bylaw, and you can be assured that we will have that information back to you in a timely fashion.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk, along the election line, I'd like to ask you about electronic voting. Is that another bylaw item that may be coming in front of us?
I have a lot of items coming forward, Mr. Mayor, I have to say. Yes, that will be something that will be coming forward. Currently, staff were working in conjunction with other municipalities and looking at the timing of the issuing of some RFPs and whether there will be an opportunity for the town of Orangeville to participate in getting an RFP and getting the costing for electronic voting, and then we would be reporting back to council in terms of what the outcomes are in that regard and recommended next steps.
Do you have a timeline on that?
It will be likely within the first quarter of this year.
Thank you. Again, councillors, any further questions here on this item? All right. Councillor Taylor, are you voting or are you going to
I asked to get back into your queue if I could, Your Worship. I apologize. I just wanted to, through you, you know, the Deputy Mayor and I think are aligned on this item, but I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing a key portion of that. And we're not trying to write a bylaw here, but the other piece to timing and whatnot was location of signs. And there was significant complaints in the last election, not just about the timing, but where they went. And some individuals were putting them on the boulevards of properties because that was town property, yet it looked like it was your house. And you know, I just want to make sure we don't lose that point in the bylaw because that was a major issue for folks. Anyway.
I agree. You're going to consider that, Madam Clerk, and
yes, we will consider all aspects of the bylaw during our review.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if I called for a motion here. Did I?
Yes, you did.
I did. Okay. So if the conversation is ended on this, we'll call a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Are you frozen there, Mr. Andrews, or did you vote yes?
I voted yes.
Sorry, I couldn't see. So there, you're back. Okay.
I'm here. Never left.
Okay. Very good. 12.4, this is the 2021 interim borrowing bylaw. Let me just open that up here. And this reads that report CPS 2020-01, a 2021 interim borrowing dated January 11, 2021 be received, and the council pass a bylaw to authorize external temporary borrowing in 2021. We have a motion for this, please. Councilor Sherwood, seconded by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. Any discussion on this item? All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. 12.5. This is a signed variance request from Greystones. Open it up. This is a report of CPS 2021-002 regarding signed variance application for Greystones Restaurant and Lounge at 63 Broadway be received, and the council grants a variance to the sign bylaw to permit a projecting sign measuring 2.508 meters in height by 0.692 meters in depth without a sway chain for the 63 Broadway conditional upon the applicant obtaining a sign permit. So this sign is, I think many of you know, is already up there. It's been there for many years, and I think it wasn't fitting within the bylaw. So this is a variance request. I visited the site, and I think it looks quite appropriate for the building size. Any further comment here, councilors? May I have a motion on this item? Councilor Andrews, seconded by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. Again, any further questions?
I just had a comment.
I'm sorry?
I just had a comment. I was in the queue there, but I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to compliment the new owners of the location for their work and perseverance of ensuring the historic value of that site, but also complimentary of the new addition that has been put onto that facility. And you know, the new sign will certainly complement that in its location.
And the multi-million-dollar investment in our town.
Yes.
And that's going to be part of a tourism strategy. It's one of the assets of our town going forward.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Fantastic facility. Yes, so again, all in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Now we're going on to 12.6. This is a proposed truck licensing, tow truck licensing bylaw. And I will read this item. That report, CPS 2021-004, regarding proposed tow truck licensing bylaw, Dufferin County local municipalities be received, and that the multi-level working group regarding the towing industry in Dufferin and the Dufferin County local municipalities be advised that the town will develop a uniform tow truck licensing bylaw in accordance with the steps outlined in the report CPS 2021-004. And that any municipality wishing to participate in stage 1 of the development of a uniform tow truck licensing bylaw contribute $1,000, and that during the development of the uniform tow truck licensing bylaw, staff will determine the cost of administering and enforcing the bylaw, the licensing fees, and any other costs associated with the delivery of the program, and that upon the passing of a bylaw, town staff provide Dufferin County and local municipalities with the opportunity to opt into having Orangeville administer the licensing and enforcement of the bylaw on a cost recovery basis. We have a motion on this item, please. Motion, Deputy Mayor McIntosh, do you have a seconder on this? I'll second it. Okay. Any discussion on this item? Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Thank you. I guess again, this is to the clerk. Has there been any interest expressed by the townships to join up with Orangeville on this?
Yes, there has been the initial interest expressed on Deputy Mayor McIntosh. Should council approve the resolution or the motion that is on the floor, then we will liaise with the respective municipalities and determine their interest in if they would choose to participate with the, I would say, the nominal cost that we indicated here.
Okay.
I just have a concern that if the other municipalities don't come on board, you know, this is something Dufferin County maybe should be doing. I know they did it and it's being handed to the lower tier, but everybody needs to be on board with this one.
Deputy Mayor, my understanding was that the county had legal advice and canceled the bylaw based on that legal advice, saying that the lower tier municipality was responsible for this particular type of licensing. So, I mean, I don't think Dufferin County is going to be bringing this back on their plate, from what I understand. Councilor Taylor, you had your hand up?
Yes, Your Worship. I'd like to speak to this if I could. Like, to me, this is another example of, you know, we live in a beautiful county, and I certainly don't want to be the Orangeville cheerleader, but I see us as completely different than the majority of areas in regards to a towing bylaw, and it's the chasing piece that's the problem. And you know, in rural areas, certainly we do not want chasing, but in more urban areas, which is Orangeville, it could be disastrous. So even though the county won't go along with us, and Your Worship, I believe I'm aligned to your assessment of it. The county has said in the past that they weren't interested. I think it's imperative that our town go forward and ensure that we don't have this chasing, you know, problem happening to us, and we've got a bylaw in place. So I'm happy to go it alone, and I think it's essential that it's part of this plan for next year.
Very good. Okay, any further questions from councilors? Councilor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As we move through this process, my question, and I've received the question from a couple of people in the tow industry, as Orangeville moves forward with this bylaw, will there be a working group that will look for feedback from people currently in the tow companies for some suggestions on how to move forward this bylaw? They're living it, right? So it has been expressed to me that they would like to be able to participate in the process and be able to give some input. So I didn't note that in the report, but I was just wondering if there was plans to have a working group or a temporary committee or task force formed to be able to address some of those issues that are being brought up by the tow companies specifically, to make sure that it's an all-encompassing bylaw and we only have to do it once. Perhaps that's best to Madam Clerk.
To Madam Clerk, but I believe that was the intent.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Post. Certainly, we do intend on involving all those that we are aware of, and as a stakeholder, excuse me, through the process, Councillor Post. So certainly, we will be reaching out to those towing companies that we are aware of, and also invite the opportunity for them to participate through a stakeholders group.
Perfect. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay, any further questions? All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. That passed unanimously. Thank you. All right, on to 12.7. This is regarding restaurant and pet shop licenses. The report, CPS 2021-005, restaurant and pet shop licenses extensions be received, and that the expiry date for restaurant and pet shop licenses issued in 2020 be extended to April 30th, 2021, and the council amend bylaw 2004-117 and bylaw 2005-095 to change the expiry date for restaurant and pet shop licenses going forward. May I have a motion? Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Taylor. Any further discussion on this item? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I know that this might be, again, jumping a little bit based on what may be coming down tomorrow. I guess we can only end up planning for what we know. And so subsequently, if there are any significant adjustments that may be announced by the Premier tomorrow, do you envision that we may have to extend this one more time, or is this something that will just, move ahead in its current design and adjust accordingly?
Councillor Andrews, we're suggesting that we move forward with the current time frame of April 30th, 2021. And of course, as things progress, we may have to reevaluate, and if that's necessary, then we will report back to council.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
All right, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to 12.8, this is a Grey County Transit Agreement. That report INS 20-001 Gray County Transit Agreement be received, and the council pass a bylaw to authorize the entering into an execution of an agreement between the corporation of the County of Gray and the corporation of the town of Orangeville for execution of the bus stop agreement. May I have a motion here? Item. Councillor Andrews, second by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. Any further comments on this item? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Moving on to 12.9. Cache developments. This is that report INS 2021-004. Cache Developments Orangeville Inc. Non-Decision Appeal of Applications, OPZ 319. And that staff and the town's legal counsel be directed to attend any local planning appeal tribunal, pre-hearing and/or case management conferences convened for the appeals filed by Transmetro Limited, care of Cache Developments Orangeville Inc., for their application to amend the town's official plan and zoning bylaw, based on the decision not being made within the timeframes prescribed by the Planning Act. And then staff and legal counsel report back to council as necessary with respect to any updates concerning the status of these appeals. May I have a motion for this item? Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Post. Any questions on this item?
I'm in your queue.
Councillor Sherwood and then Councillor Taylor.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. Perhaps Mr. Ward could explain to us how it came to this, maybe just to give the general public some explanation as to how this event came about.
Mr. Ward.
Certainly, and through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Sherwood. The report essentially provides a bit of a status update, and in the report there is a bit of a background explanation as to the submission, but essentially council may recall the applications were initially filed in March of 2019. They were subsequently deemed complete in July of that year upon receipt of some additional submission materials that were needed to deem the applications as a complete submission. A public meeting was held actually around this time last year in consideration of the applications. Council may recall there were some issues raised with respect to the submission in terms of its the proposed development's alignment with the applicable policy framework for this area, and this area being the lands generally located near the intersection of Hanson Boulevard and Veterans Way. Through the submission review, staff continue to have been working with the applicants in efforts to address some of those issues, and those discussions continue to progress. Having said that, the applicants have indeed filed an appeal with respect to their applications to the local planning appeal tribunal, and the basis of that appeal is, of course, due to no decision having been made by council within the timeframes required by the prescribed by the Planning Act. So with that said, there is a case management conference set for February 3rd in consideration of these appeals. We're anticipating that since this is the first case management conference, it would largely be procedural in nature to generally identify or determine parties and participants in the proceedings, and perhaps set out some logistical timeframes, etc., for proceedings in terms of how that appeal might be reviewed or adjudicated. Having said that, staff intentions, of course, would be to report back to council as necessary with respect to any status updates concerning these appeals.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Ward. So same kind of questions, and I guess I read the report 4 different times because, you know, the public is contacting us asking these questions, and it is a rather complex issue. And then even as you describe it, I'm still not sure I quite understand it. Like that area that you just mentioned right by Hanson, what is the issue that we're trying to solve for there in like layman's terms? small 4-letter words, perhaps, so that I can grasp.
Mr. Ward.
Well, again, through your worship to Councillor Taylor, a lot of the issues are planning related in terms of adherence to the policy framework. There was a bit of background presented at the public meeting back about this time last year. I won't get into too much details. You asked for layman's terms. That can be difficult sometimes in planning context, but essentially the lands, there are some employment permissions set out or intentions for these lands set out in our planning documents. And the proposals coming forward are more of a mixed use nature, so there's a bit of a departure with respect to the proposed development relative to the policy framework that exists. And this, in a sense, is the reason why they filed their applications, because they're intending to amend the official plan policies to accommodate their proposal. With that said, the policy framework that exists in the province and the county right on down into our official plan contains some protections with respect to lands identified for employment uses. And those protections exist to the extent that any proposed redesignation requires a more comprehensive evaluation in terms of the town's long-term employment needs, etc. Those policies trickle down from a provincial planning framework, and the policies of the province now require that sort of provincial or employment growth framework be determined at the county level. Now, the county is currently working on that in terms of their municipal comprehensive review underway, and that will give us a more updated growth framework for employment use needs in the town for the long term. And until that's done, it's somewhat difficult to arrive at a decision with respect to these applications. So that, I know it's perhaps not as layman's terms as you would like, but really is the issue of lands being set aside for employment uses. The applications proposed are looking to differ from that, and the policy framework that exists requires a stronger level of review and evaluation needed when considering changing employment area designations to accommodate non-employment uses.
Worship, may I ask?
Go ahead.
Yes. You mentioned that the timeframes were not met by council, and when you mean by council, you mean the town. But why did we not meet them? What happened there, Mr. Ward, if I could?
Sure. Again, through you, your worship, to Councillor Taylor, the Planning Act does include some timeframes in which if a decision is not made within those timeframes, the applicant is enabled the ability to appeal those applications on a non-decision basis. The timelines are fairly, some would say, aggressive. They've in fact been sort of condensed during the current provincial government regime. That's not to say if the time frame is 120 days or 180 days, that on the 181st day you've got to make a decision or go to LPAT. It's just simply a framework within which if a decision is not made within those timelines, the applicant does have the option to appeal if they choose to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. I appreciate that.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to direct staff on this matter. Any further commentary from council? All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Moving on to item 13, this is correspondence. There's two pieces of correspondence, one from Dufferin County and one from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. We have a motion to receive these two pieces of correspondence. Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Post. Any questions or on these two items? All right, call a vote. All in favor of receiving them? Thank you. And I'm going to take this in bulk as well. Committee and board minutes. We've got 14 through 14.6. May I have a motion to receive those minutes? Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Sherwood. Any commentary on those minutes? Councillor, wish to speak?
Yeah, just very quickly, Your Worship, in regards to the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, the minutes I was pleased to see as the chair, in this case Councillor Post, the stopgap ramps that had been in fact referenced earlier this evening as part of another presentation regarding tourism. Great to see. And also reference to the single usage or single person electric vehicles, and Councillor Post and I think we'll have an opportunity to speak a little bit more on that, but very pleased to also see that included, as I've had the opportunity of speaking with some of the town staff on a very similar initiative with low-speed electric vehicles. But again, great initiatives by that committee.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or commentary? We have I'll call the vote on receiving these items. All in favor? Thank you. Now, notice of motion prior to meeting. Councillor Sherwood, are we going to talk to this item tonight?
I believe that would be number 16.
16, okay. Any notices of motion prior to meeting? Not that we received, no? Okay, notice of motion at meeting. Go ahead, Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, I actually have two items that I would like to discuss. The first being my first motion is that I would like to bring forward a motion for the January 18th, 2021 meeting to reconsider the vote of January 27th, 2020, which was resolution 2020-33, regarding the installation of guide rails at McCannell Avenue and Rolling Hills Drive. So that will be coming forward next week.
Okay.
And do I still have the floor, Your Worship, for my second motion? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. That notice be waived to allow for the introduction and consideration of a motion regarding the moratorium on the 2-hour parking limit for downtown Orangeville and the bagging of signs, which we approved on the November 9th, 2020 council meeting, resolution 2020-383, which expires today, January 11th, as it is time sensitive, and that the moratorium on the 2-hour parking limit for downtown Orangeville be extended to coincide with the other COVID relief measures that were passed by council on December 14th, 2020, resolution number 2020-448, providing relief until March 31st, 2021.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm asking for that to be, because it's time sensitive, that we vote and discuss tonight.
Okay. So we need a vote to waive privilege. Okay, Councillor Post.
I actually just have a question as well. So.
Okay, we need somebody to make a motion to waive the time requirement on this.
That's fine. I can move that as well, but I do have a question.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. All in favor?
Yes.
Okay. So we have this motion from Councillor Sherwood. Somebody wish to second that motion? Councillor Andrews. Councillor Post, go right ahead.
Thank you very much. My question is through you to Councillor Sherwood. Now, my understanding when we put the moratorium on the 2-hour parking was to give better opportunity for the BIA members to communicate that there was a 2-hour parking limit, correct? And it wasn't so much of a COVID relief measure as to why we moved it. It was to allow time for them to better communicate to their customers. So I'm just curious as to why the need for the extension now. Were they unable to meet those communication requirements? I'm happy to support it. I'm just curious because I know that the BIA has been concerned in the past about the lack of parking, and by having a 2-hour limit, we're actually able to have better parking downtown. So I'm happy to support it. I just want to understand the reason why, because it doesn't necessarily align with what we did initially. So
Yes, yes, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Post. Thank you for that. It's not necessarily due to COVID relief. I was just referencing time expiration based on our COVID relief measures. Right now, we are in current lockdown. So these businesses, these restaurants or whatever that we're having after hours and having people come in and stay for more than 2 hours, they're obviously not there. But once we open up again, they want to come back and be able to let their customers stay for a couple hours until, and then it may be possible for longer than a couple of hours. So it's more to get the people educated once we reopen, because I don't think there was enough time to educate the people because we went into lockdown quite quickly after we first put in the moratorium.
Okay, thank you for the explanation.
Okay, Councillor Peters, did you wish to speak to this as well?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My perspective was covered somewhat by Councillor Post. No, I don't believe it's a COVID measure per se.
No.
I worry about extending and extending and extending. I mean, at some point we have to return to this 2-hour limit. I believe that's the proper solution for downtown, and I don't want too many people to get used to parking there for too long. That said, I don't think, another 2 months is a big deal, but I think the education really needs to be emphasized, and people don't have as much to do at the moment. Maybe now is the time, even though they're not being patrons at these businesses. There are other places downtown where you can park for more than 2 hours, and again, I'll support this time, but I'm afraid to say it'll probably be my last.
Yeah, and through you, Your Worship, just to clarify, this is an ask of the BIA board. We had a meeting last week and they had asked that council consider this only because, like I said, we went to lockdown kind of shortly after we initially put this up, and we potentially could be locked down for another couple of more months, right? Meaning all of January, possibly even all of February. So by saying March 31st and that's it, we might have a good month of giving people education that there is going to be enforcement. It's not going to be a forever. And I don't think that's the ask of the BIA at all.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Any further questions on that item? Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to suggest that, maybe there's a friendly amendment to that and there's a timeline put into it. Candidly, there's no benefit to saying no, but at the same time, I don't know, the articulate Councillor Peters kind of speaks for me. I just like to not have this come back again post a certain date that we could all agree to tonight, and the BIA can be forewarned that we're done. So is there a way to?
Yeah, Councillor Taylor, my motion is saying that it ends on March 31st.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
and that I don't anticipate
that
we should have to ask for an extension.
Then maybe we could just verbally let the BIA know through this meeting that March 31st is it.
Correct.
Very good. Okay, any further questions? All in favor? Thank you. All right, moving on. We have new business. Any new business, councillors you'd like to speak to? Seeing none, question period. We have somebody on board, okay. And who might that be, Mr. Donato?
They're muted, so they have to push star 6 on the phone.
Okay, whoever is on board for question period, you'll need to press star 6 on your phone, and you can join the meeting. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm muted. Just need to talk.
Go ahead. Whoever's on the phone for question period, wish to ask a question, go ahead.
It's me, Sandy, and resident town council. It's Adam Thompson calling. I just want to say thank you for all your information tonight. I'm also running my own business. It's called I'm Square T-shirts, and I have been talking to W. Sherwood, and she's interested in buying a shirt for me. I got lots of information on t-shirts that cost $30, and whoever one, they can contact me at 519-941-1634.
Okay, Adam, thank you very much for letting us know. Yes, we'll get over and get a shirt from you for sure, Adam. Thank you. Councillor Sherwood, go right ahead.
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Adam. Adam, what specifically is targeted on your t-shirts?
Is my artwork that I have done in the past. Because of this COVID-19, I put words on it myself.
Yeah. Adam, but you've been busy making shirts, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Adam, I'll be in touch with you to get my t-shirt.
We'll be in touch, Adam. Thank you for calling in.
No problem. And Sandy, I just want to say to you that I'd like to hear from Amy McIntosh and Lisa Post.
Very good.
And Peter too.
Okay. Very good, Adam. Happy New Year to you. All the best.
Thanks, Sandy, and I hope you guys have a wonderful New Year.
Okay, Adam. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on now. We've got a number of bylaws here, 19.1 through 19.4. May I have a motion to approve these bylaws, please? Councillor Post, seconded by Councillor Andrews. Any further questions? All in favor? Thank you. And one more motion to adjourn. Councillor Peters, second by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. And good night. And we'll see you all next Monday.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Take care.
Thank you.
Night all.
Bye.
Night, folks.